Chapter 25. The small boat swayed on the river. There was no moon tonight, only a few scattered stars. The river reflected the lights by the riverside, and one could vaguely see one's own shadow on the water. The guard rowed the small boat towards the exquisitely decorated boat in the middle of the river. Ian lowered her head and said nothing. The guard couldn't help but look back at Ian. He saw the girl sitting at the stern of the boat, sitting upright. Her hands were tied behind her back, motionless. As if sensing his gaze, she raised her head and glanced at him. The guard shivered, and the oar in his hand almost fell into the river. That glance was really cold. He couldn't describe that feeling. It was like a dead person was looking at him blankly. The sound of the waves on the river was like a dream, making her seem even more ghostly. It was really too strange. The guard was anxious. She didn't speak much, didn't ask anything, and was unusually quiet. Ordinary women would at least ask a question or two at this time, right? But Ian didn't. She was like a quiet puppet, so quiet that she didn't seem like a living person. The water sparkled in the night like a whirlpool, bringing her thoughts back to that day when Wanru's people pressed her head down and she drowned in the pond. In the past, she could swim and was good at it. But today, at this moment, her tense nerves told her that she was afraid of water. She was afraid of falling into this small boat, afraid of being sucked into the endless whirlpool, afraid that she would never be able to break out of the water. She was afraid that she would see the sky getting farther and farther away from her, but she couldn't do anything. She was afraid that this life would come to an abrupt end like her previous life. She was disgusted by her cowardice and fear at this moment, but she couldn't think of any other way. She could only sit on the boat and silently let the guard take her to the magnificent boat. This boat should be a rich family's boat. It was smaller than a junk boat, but much bigger than a fisherman's boat. The guard took Ian to the boat, opened the curtain of the boat, and took Ian in. Then he rowed the small boat away, as if he had received orders and didn't dare to approach. Ian stared at the person in front of him. Fansheng had also dressed up meticulously today. His clothes were extremely gaudy and luxurious. Inside the cabin, incense and colorful lanterns were placed. The lights were misty, and the cabin was soft and fluffy. As soon as one entered, they could feel a charming and gentle fragrance. Ian struggled out of the whirlpool in his mind. He looked at Fansheng and said, "Master Fan." Fansheng walked over and sat her down on a chair, saying, "Ahi, you've been wronged." Ian said nothing. "I didn't expect that woman to be so vicious. She actually kidnapped you and locked you in the house. If I hadn't ordered people to protect you in secret and immediately called for people to rescue you after learning about this, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Ahi, now you should understand my painstaking efforts, right?" Fansheng lamented. Ian looked at the ropes around her feet. He shook his head and said, "I don't understand." From beginning to end, whether it was Fansheng's bodyguards who took her out of the house, into the carriage, or onto the ship, he didn't untie Hyan's ropes. The coarse rope had long since abraded her wrists, but she didn't feel any pain. She was just speechless. "I was afraid that you would misunderstand me and refuse to get on the ship. That's why I didn't untie you." Fansheng followed her gaze and hurriedly explained. Although he said this, he didn't do anything else. "We're on the ship." Hyan smiled. "I won't run. You can untie me." Her smile was like the morning sun reflecting the snow. It was indescribably bright and beautiful. Fansheng looked at her in a daze. He thought to himself, "My goodness, I wonder how Hyan grew up. She's become more and more moving. She's even more valiant and heroic than before." Thinking like this, his heart itched even more. He reached out to touch Hyan's face. Hyan turned her head, and he missed. His smile froze. He squatted down and looked at Hyan. "It's not that I don't want to let you go. Ahi, you need to know your current situation. My wife was born jealous. She definitely won't let you go. Even if you return to the He family today, she will still find a way to find you tomorrow. My father-in-law is a manager. Your father is only a military officer. If you want to find trouble, there will be plenty of opportunities. Let's not talk about this for now. The most important thing is you. You're a girl with no one to protect you. Once she catches you, she will definitely find a way to torture you. I can't bear to see you like this. Fancheng looked at her affectionately. How can I just watch you suffer? Oh. He-Yin's tied hand were slowly undoing the ropes. She calmly asked in return, Then what do you plan to do? Seeing that her tone had changed, Fancheng was overjoyed. Without thinking, he said, I want to hide you in a safe place. Normally, there will still be servants to serve you. This way, my wife won't be able to find you. After a long time, I will divorce that woman and bring you back to the Fan family. At that time, you will be the head wife of the Fan family. No one will dare to bully you. Head wife? He-Yin asked. That's right. Fancheng touched his chest. Ahi, I swear to you that you are the only one in my heart. If this marriage hadn't been set, I wouldn't have married her. Don't worry, I will only love you in this life. I, Fancheng's wife, will only be you. But you'll have to wait. He-Yin heard this and laughed softly. Fancheng was stunned. You want me to be your mistress, she said indifferently. If the real Lady He was here, she would have been moved to tears by this vow. But she wasn't Lady He. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. If a man wanted to deceive a woman, he would say any kind of nonsense. Why would Fancheng want to take her as his head wife? He just wanted to deceive her first. She didn't know if Wanru looked at her the same way she looked at Lady He when she was focused on Su Jihing back then. Ahiyu. Fancheng frowned. Master Fan, I've already made myself very clear. Since you're already married, I'll also let go of the past. From this bridge, we'll go our separate ways. I have no intention of being your head wife, so I hope you won't pester me. After saying this, she loosened the knot on her hand and opened it. Fancheng didn't see the rope on the ground. He looked at her in surprise, then suddenly sneered. He-Yin, you really don't want to do things the hard way. I've been coaxing you nicely, but you're still angry. Pester me? There are so many women in the world. Why should I pester someone like you? But the time and effort I've spent on you can't be wasted. Master Fan, you wouldn't want me to give you silver, right? He-Yin found it funny. This master doesn't lack money. You can use yourself to repay me. He revealed a vulgar smile. If you serve me well, I might even reward you with some silver. He-Yin hadn't opened her mouth when she suddenly heard a furious voice. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? He-Yin looked over in surprise. The curtain was lifted, and a drenched person walked in with large strides. It was Yin-Sheng. Chapter 26. Yin-Sheng. He-Yin almost thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. She looked again and confirmed that it was indeed Yin-Sheng. Yin-Sheng had already walked in front of her and stood in front of her to protect her. With one palm, he pushed Fancheng far away. You, how did you get up here? Fancheng finally managed to steady himself and shouted while pointing at him. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Of course I swam up here, Yin-Sheng said. He had just been scooped up from the water, and his entire body was dripping wet. He crouched down to untie the ropes around He-Yan's feet. How did you know I was here? I was afraid that Fancheng would pester you, so I sent Shuangqing back to keep watch. Who knew that I would see you being called away? Shuangqing was the manservant that He-Yin had bought for Yin-Sheng. He usually accompanied him to the school. Shuangqing followed me here and turned around to tell me. I ran and swam all the way here. Fortunately, I arrived in time. He untied the ropes around He-Yan's feet and was about to untie the ropes around He-Yan's hands. He didn't expect that the ropes around He-Yan's hands were loose. He felt that it was a bit strange, but he didn't think too much about it. He immediately stood up and glared at Fancheng. If I didn't arrive in time, what would this bastard have done to you? Done what? Fancheng finally regained his senses. He looked at Yin-Sheng and smiled fearlessly. Do you think that you can change anything by coming here? There was no one else on the boat other than the three of them. They were probably afraid that they would disturb Fancheng's mood. Even the bodyguards who had escorted He-Yin here were nowhere to be found. They probably rowed a small boat far away and waited for Fancheng's orders after the matter was over. Your sister will be mine sooner or later, Fancheng disdainfully said. I think you guys are refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Don't be so shameless. Who was the one who thought of ways to climb into my bed? Now you're pretending to be a chaste woman. You. Yin-Sheng's expression changed when he heard that. He pounced on him and punched him. You bastard. Fancheng was almost knocked down by him. The boat shook violently because of his movement, causing He Yunsheng to stagger. He Yin furrowed her brows. Just as she was about to help, she saw something flash in Fan Cheng's sleeve. It seemed to be a silver light. Her scalp tightened as she sternly said, "Yunsheng, dodge." He Yunsheng did not know what had happened and subconsciously turned over. Dong! The knife that Fan Cheng had taken out stabbed into his clothes. He Yunsheng also broke out in cold sweat and said, "You dare to kill people. Why would I dare?" Fan Cheng's expression was ferocious. If the son of a military officer dies, then so be it. When you're dead, I'll enslave your sister and make her my plaything every day. When I'm tired of her, I'll sell her to the building. He laughed. He Yan's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. She did not touch Fan Cheng because she was afraid of bringing trouble to the He family. But now, it seemed that whether she did or not, Fan Cheng would not leave the matter at that. He Yunsheng was also furious. He simply turned around and slammed his head into Fan Cheng's stomach. Fan Cheng was caught off guard and was knocked down. The boat swayed and fell to the ground. He opened his mouth and was about to call for help when He Yin shouted, "Don't let him make a sound." Then she flew forward and stuffed the handkerchief on the table into Fan Cheng's mouth. Fan Cheng's mouth was gagged. He Yunsheng had already ridden on his back and started punching him. He was originally a youth and had great strength. Although Fan Cheng's mouth was fierce, how could he really be his opponent? Gradually, he stopped struggling. "Yunsheng, that's enough." Ian stopped him. "If you continue hitting him, he'll die. It's good that he's dead." He Yunsheng gritted his teeth. "If he's dead, he won't miss you. Then the He family will be in trouble." Ian pulled his hand away. "Get him up first." He Yunsheng climbed up from Fan Cheng's back. Fan Cheng faced the ground and did not move. He Yunsheng stretched out his leg and kicked him. "Get up, don't play dead." Fan Cheng still did not move. "You're dead after just 2 hits. You really know how to extort people." He Yunsheng mocked and wanted to kick Fan Cheng up. But when he moved, he suddenly saw a red cloud gradually appear near his feet where Fan Cheng was lying. He said, He Yin was carefully listening to the movements outside. Just now, the boat was shaking, so he didn't know if Fan Cheng's bodyguard saw it. But now, it didn't seem like anything was wrong. Perhaps they thought it was Fan Cheng's interest. At this moment, He Yunsheng's expression suddenly changed. He looked at it strangely and froze. After a moment, she crouched down and calmly flipped Fan Cheng over. "Ah!" He Yunsheng let out a short cry. He quickly covered his mouth and swallowed the rest of the sound back into his throat. He looked in front of him in disbelief. Fan Cheng was flipped over and laid on the ground. His body was soft as if he had no bones. The clothes around his waist and abdomen were already stained red with blood. A bit of the knife's handle was outside, and the tip of the knife was completely buried in his flesh. Just now, when he was fighting He Yunsheng, Fan Cheng took out a short knife from his sleeve. Later on, when the boat was shaking, the knife fell to the ground. He Yunsheng bumped into him, causing him to fall down. Coincidentally, in a daze, the knife stabbed into his own abdomen. Originally, it shouldn't have been that deep, but He Yunsheng still pressed him to the ground and beat him with his fists. As a result, the entire knife stabbed into his abdomen and he breathed his last. He Yunsheng was so scared that his legs went soft. He fell to the ground and said in alarm, "He can't be." Ian stretched out 2 fingers to check his breathing. She spat out 2 words, "He's dead." He Yunsheng looked at her blankly, as if he didn't understand what she meant. After a moment, he sobbed and said in a daze, How did he die? What should we do?" The boat was still in the middle of the river, swaying and floating. There seemed to be no other light around them except for the lights on the boat. In the dead silence, He Yunsheng's choked sobs were particularly clear. He said, "What should we do? What should we do?" In the end, he was still a teenager. He had never killed a person, seen blood, and even had to take a detour to kill a fish. Although he spoke fiercely, he didn't expect that he would really take someone's life. He Yunsheng was already panicking. He repeatedly muttered the meaningless words, "What should we do?" He Yin frowned as she looked at Fan Cheng's corpse. She had killed too many people, but they were all enemies on the battlefield. She had never killed someone like this before. Although she was a little surprised, she didn't panic. She looked at He Yunxing again. He was in a daze. He seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. He shook Fan Cheng's corpse as if he wanted to wake him up. He had already lost his mind. Pa! A burning pain came from his face. It was like a wake-up call. He Yunxing woke up from his confusion and looked at He Yin in front of him. He suddenly realized that compared to him, He Yin was overly calm. Her gaze was as sharp as a sword, piercing through his heart. Her hands were also very steady, unlike his, which was still trembling. Her voice was also cold, with a hint of exasperation. She said, He Yunxing, wake up. He's already dead. Chapter 27. He was already dead. He Yunxing stared blankly at the scene in front of him. Fan Cheng's wound was still bleeding. That knife had pierced right through his abdomen. He Yunxing felt his throat go dry. After a moment, he finally opened his mouth. His voice was still trembling, but it carried a determination to face death. He said, I'm going to the Yamen to surrender myself. I killed him. He stood up and walked forward in a daze. However, he had only taken 2 steps when someone pulled him back, and he almost tripped. He Yin asked, What case are you going to surrender yourself to? He's dead. I'll pay with my life. He Yunxing choked out, It's only right and proper. It's not worth it to pay with your life for this kind of person. He Yin glanced at Fan Cheng on the ground. I originally thought that even if today passed, Fan Cheng wouldn't let this matter rest. Sooner or later, the He family would be in trouble. But now, there's one less problem. Now that he's dead, at least the He family will have a lot more peace in the future. Do you still remember what he said at that time? He Yunxing remembered that at that time. Fan Cheng wanted to kill him. He said, When you're dead, I'll enslave your sister. Every day, she'll be my entertainment. When I'm tired of playing with her, I'll sell her to the brothel. He said such arrogant and conceited words as if it was only right and proper. You should know that Fan Cheng didn't have to pay with his life for killing the 2 of us on this boat today. Why do you have to pay with your life just because you accidentally killed him? Our lives are like grass, and his life is especially precious. Why? He Yunxing was still young and hot-blooded. It wasn't worth it to pay with his life for someone like Fan Cheng. I'm not willing either. He Yunxing heard this and grief filled his heart. He only said, But do we have any other choice right now? He Yunxing's thinking was simple. He had killed Fan Cheng, and the Fan family had come knocking on his door. He would pay with his own life, and this matter would be settled. He Yin, on the other hand, knew that this was impossible. In her previous life, she came from a wealthy and influential family. Naturally, she knew that for a family like Fan Cheng's, even if He Yunxing surrendered and paid with his life, the Fan family would not let the matter rest. He Sui and her, as well as Qing Mei and Shuang Qing, would not let any of them off. Come here. He Yin patted him on the shoulder. He Yunxing looked at her in confusion. You said that you swam here. Are you good at swimming? Can you hold your breath? He Yin asked. He Yunxing nodded. Sure. Change into my clothes and wait for my message. Jump off the boat, swim downstream, change into clean clothes, and sneak home. You have to be quick, okay? He Yunxing nodded in confusion, but then he shook his head and looked at He Yin. What about you? He Yin picked up the bundle from the ground. Inside the bundle were the new clothes that she had bought for He Yunxing from the tailor shop. She said, I'll change into a new set of clothes and lure them away. They referred to Fan Cheng's bodyguards. He Yunxing was shocked and blurted out, No, how are you going to lure them away? You're a woman. If they catch you, they will kill you. They will torture you. You don't even have the strength to truss a chicken. If you fall into their hands, you will suffer a fate worse than death. He was still rambling on when He Yin pressed him on the shoulder. No, I can shake them off, she said. Under the dim light, the girl's gaze was clear and firm. At this time, she was even smiling. That smile was very relaxed. It inexplicably comforted He Yunxing's flustered heart, but it also made him want to cry. I can't let you go, He Yunxing muttered. Listen, Yunxing, you wear my clothes and jump off the boat. I will lure them away. Let's not see each other for the next 2 days. I have to lie low, so I can't go back to the He family. In 5 days, go to a tavern called Willow Spring House in the west of the city. There's a row of willow trees in front of the tavern. Find a third willow tree from the left and dig 3 inches down. I will leave a letter for you there. We will meet again at that time, okay? He Yinsheng shook his head. I can't let you go. You are not a child anymore. You are a man. In the future, you will carry the heavy burden of the He family. You have to calm down and do as I say. I will be fine. You know, I am fine every time, she said. He Yinsheng was speechless. She was indeed fine every time. Whether it was Wang Juge, gambling at the casino, or horse racing at the school ground, she was always able to surprise people. But this time was different. This time, she was carrying a life on her back. You explain to father for me, He Yin said. After a while, Fan Qing's bodyguards will come. We don't have much time. Hurry up and change your clothes, she said. Turn your back. I will take off my coat for you first. The boat quietly floated in the river. He Yinsheng and He Yin faced each other again. Immediately, the two of them had changed their clothes. He Yin was wearing new men's clothes. Her hair was tied into a man's bun. She looked very handsome and had really become a handsome young man. He Yinsheng was wearing He Yan's long dress. He didn't know where to put his hands and feet. He looked very awkward. He Yin laughed out loud. How can you still be in the mood to laugh at a time like this? He Yinsheng had a lot on his mind. He was in no mood to bicker with He Yin. It's not the time for me to stop laughing. He Yin picked up a cloth from the ground and covered her face completely. Only her eyes were exposed. However, there was a smile in her eyes. You have to get used to this. Get used to this? What was this? Killing people and living as a fugitive. He Yinsheng only felt tired. Along with it, there was a deep sense of worry and fear. When I count to 3, jump down. Do you understand? He Yin said, Don't worry about me. We will meet again. He Yinsheng was about to walk to the bow of the boat. After taking 2 steps, he turned back and looked into He Yan's eyes. You'll be fine, right? He Yin rubbed his head. The young man's hair was still dripping with water droplets from the water. It was cold and furry. She smiled and replied gently, Of course. Chapter 28. The drizzle of rain seemed to be black as well. The sky and water met. In the gloomy sky, the flames of the fishing boats were bright and dim, as if they were ghosts from the other side. The last strum of the zither faded away, and the night became exceptionally quiet. At this moment, a woman's scream pierced through the long night. Murder! Murder! In a few small boats that were gathered far away from the pleasure boat, the guards were sitting together, waiting for Fan Cheng's signal. Suddenly, they heard the mournful screams and were all startled. What's going on? It's already been so long. Why is she still causing trouble? The leader of the guards asked. Young master didn't send a personal message. Let's wait a little longer, someone said. After being Fan Cheng's guard for so many years, the most important thing was to guess his master's thoughts. They were accustomed to this kind of thing. Fan Cheng had been the young master of the Fan family for so many years. Other than the women who threw themselves at him, he had also ruined many good families. Tonight's situation had already happened more than once. Those poor women would be kidnapped to the boat or the outer residence, allowing Fan Cheng to humiliate them. After the matter was done, he would give them some money to send them off. Those women were poor and had nowhere to cry out their grievances, so they could only let it go. He Yin would also become one of them. Originally, Lady He was deeply in love with Fan Cheng, so there was no need for her to go through so much trouble. Who knew that after the commotion at the Fan family's door, she would really become angry and want to break off all ties with Fan Cheng. Fan Cheng's thoughts were aroused. If the soft approach didn't work, then he would use the hard approach. What these guards needed to do was to bring He Yin to Fan Cheng and deal with the aftermath. I feel that something's wrong. The leader of the guards stood up and stood at the bow of the boat to survey the situation. He saw that Fan Cheng's pleasure boat was violently swaying in the river. From the extent of the swaying, it seemed like someone was fighting inside. No, there's a problem, he shouted. Everyone get up. There's something wrong with the ship. The rest of the people were shocked and quickly rowed their small boats towards the boat. When they were still some distance away, they suddenly saw a woman running out of the boat. The woman was stumbling and her movements were panicked. It was Hien. She seemed to be hiding from someone. She screamed and fell into the river. She was quickly submerged by the torrential river, almost without making any sound. Like Sure she only stirred up a cluster of ripples on the surface of the water, and then there was no more movement. "Young master," the guard couldn't help but call out. No one cared about Hien's life or death. When the small boat was about to reach the boat, the leading Imperial bodyguard used his lightness skill to sweep over the bow of the boat and climb onto the boat. He took a few steps into the boat and saw that there was someone on the boat with his back facing him. It was a man. His face was covered with a handkerchief, and only his eyes were exposed. Under the dim lights, his face was blurry, and at his feet, Fan Sheng was lying on his back in a pool of blood. The masked man held a dagger in his hand. The Imperial bodyguard was extremely shocked. He didn't expect that there would be another person on the boat. Looking at Fan Sheng, he was afraid that the odds were against him. For a moment, he was shocked and angry. Without thinking, he threw himself at the masked man. "You dare!" The masked man sneered and began to fight with the Imperial bodyguard. The sounds of fighting could be heard from the boat. The boat shook more and more violently. The rest of the Imperial bodyguards also caught up to the boat. The masked man saw that there were many people on the other side and didn't continue to fight. He slashed the Imperial bodyguard's sword and jumped into the river without thinking. "Catch him!" the Imperial bodyguard leader shouted. "He killed young master." Everyone followed, but they found that the masked man was very cunning. The Imperial bodyguards all boarded the boat. They thought that he had jumped into the river, but he actually boarded the small boat that they came from. This was the center of the river. Although there were people who knew how to swim, the night was too dark and it was difficult to avoid encountering danger. But the small boat was light and thin, so it moved very quickly with the current. The boat was slightly heavier, so even if several people paddled together, they were still half a step behind the masked man. One in front and one behind, in the drizzle, no one saw the fight in the middle of the river. When they were about to reach the shore, the masked man threw away the wooden paddle in his hand. With a tap of his foot, he jumped onto the shore and disappeared. The Imperial bodyguard leader said, "Leave 2 people to go find the city guards. The rest of you follow me." Although it was night, it wasn't very late. Spring was coming, and there were still peddlers doing business on both sides of the river. They saw a masked man suddenly rush over from the dock. He came in a hurry and knocked over countless peddlers. Following behind him was a group of Imperial bodyguards. Their murderous aura was very frightening. "What's going on? Why are you in such a hurry?" The peddler who had his stall knocked over didn't dare to say anything. He bent down to pick up the scattered fruits on the ground. "It seems like there's been a murder. Look at the people chasing after him. They aren't ordinary people. The heavens have pity on us. Why has it been so chaotic recently?" The water by the river had a fishy smell. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the water. First, it grabbed the Sure on the shore. Then, the whole person was pulled out of the water, bringing with him a fishy smell. He Yunxing's whole body was trembling. He didn't dare to move too early in case he was discovered. He dived under the water for a long time before he quietly swam downstream. At this moment, his face was pale and his lips were purple. He didn't know if it was because the river water was too cold for too long or because he was simply afraid. He was still tightly holding a basket in his hand. Inside the basket were the clothes that Ian gave him in the tailor's shop. It was the basket used to store snacks on the boat. Ian put the clothes in the basket and covered him. The clothes were clean and not soaked by the water. He took off the woman's clothes, rolled them into a ball, and threw them into the basket. Then he tied a few pieces of Sure to the basket and threw the basket into the river. The river instantly swallowed up the basket. He changed into the new spring clothes. The clothes were very well made, and the style was very beautiful. There was also a cloak of the same color, which was just enough to hide his wet hair. As he put on the clothes, his throat choked up. However, there was no extra time for him to be afraid here. Hian's words were still in his ears. "You have to change into clean clothes and sneak home. You have to be fast." He had to be fast. He staggered and took a small path, walking quickly in the direction of home. There seemed to be city guards in the city, looking for people everywhere. He Yunxing walked and heard people talking on the street. I heard that someone on the boat died a horrible death. Who? I don't know. It's the young master of a big family. Didn't you see the city guards looking for people everywhere? There's so many people. The murderer must have wings and can't escape. Maybe they have already caught him. Aya, the rain won't stop. My clothes are all wet. The discussion gradually faded away until it couldn't be heard anymore. Faster, a little faster. A young man in a green robe walked by the street. His spring clothes were still thin, probably because he felt cold on such a rainy day. He tightened his clothes and walked quickly home. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. The pedestrians on the street who didn't have umbrellas hurriedly took shelter from the rain. The hawkers hid under the eaves and shouted loudly. The pedestrians passing by took a look. There seemed to be no difference between tonight and last night. Sister, someone whispered to himself. Like the spring night wind, it fell into the drizzle and disappeared without a trace. The young man buried his head and walked forward. He didn't look back. Tears fell down. Chapter 29. He went in that direction. Chase after him. The guard leader pointed at the garrison troops that had rushed over. The garrison troops had enough men and horses, so they chased in the direction he pointed. Fan Cheng's other guards looked at the leader. Someone asked in a trembling voice, "Young master is dead. What should we do?" As Fan Cheng's guards, they had failed to protect Fan Cheng. The Fan family would definitely hold them responsible. If it was light, they would be heavily punished. If it was heavy, they would be angered to the point of losing their lives. Who killed young master? Someone asked. I fought with that person before. He was very skilled. The leader clenched his fists. I wasn't his match. Did they come for young master? Heavens, who was it? Who knew? Fan Cheng had done so many evil things. Since that person wanted his life, it was obvious that they had long held a grudge against him. The girl that had been defiled by Fan Cheng also had parents and brothers. Perhaps it was to avenge their loved ones or something else. The person was already dead. The murderer had been caught. The truth had been revealed. Someone finally remembered Yin. He's already dead. The river was so deep and cold. A woman without any strength would have fallen into it. But so what? No one cared. Yin was still alive. Perhaps the Fan family would take their anger out on him. It was better that he was dead. At least the He family's matter would end here. If he's dead, then he's dead. The leader said woodenly, it's better that he's dead. With that one sentence, Hian's fate was sealed. The sound of horse hooves echoed through the streets. Everyone in the city was in a state of panic. A young man in green walked past the ruined temple where the beggars lived calmly. He threw his wet old clothes into the well that had been abandoned for a long time. He had already changed his clothes during his escape. His spring clothes were worn inside. He only needed to throw away his old clothes. He didn't need to wear a headscarf to avoid attracting attention. She touched the wall, and her hand was covered in a layer of dust. She patted her face with her hand that was covered in black dust, and her overly white face immediately darkened a little. She looked like a young man from an ordinary family who usually worked outside. But he was still a handsome young man. The young man walked forward unhurriedly. Behind him, the city guards were arresting people everywhere. Ian was not as relaxed as he looked. Fan Cheng's bodyguards had fought with her before, so as long as they looked carefully, they would be able to recognize her figure. One's appearance could be disguised, but one's body couldn't be deceived. The capital's city guards weren't useless, so it wasn't easy to hide from them. Even if he ran into a run-down temple, as long as he interrogated the beggars, he would know that he was a stranger. There was also the matter of leaving the city. The city gates must have been sealed at this moment, and for the next month, there would be strict checks when entering and leaving the city. If they searched the houses one by one, they would be discovered sooner or later. What a headache. The Fan family was even more powerful than she had imagined. They had actually called so many people to chase after her. Hien was not willing to give up his life in vain. Hien was in imminent danger as the garrison troops came from every direction. All of a sudden, she thought of something and reached into her sleeve to take out something. The paper was already crumpled and wet from the rain, so it was almost impossible to see the words written on it. This was the conscription notice Yunsheng had torn down from the wall that day. Conscription, The conscription office was in the open space outside the horse track on the west side of the city. Tents were set up there, and many people were filling in the paperwork and undergoing a simple inspection. When the time came, they would set off together. This time, they went to Liangzhou to recruit soldiers in a hurry, so it probably wouldn't be very strict. Even the age of the recruits wasn't at the prime of their lives. Unless the people who were willing to go were extremely poor, who would be willing to go and suffer in vain in a time of peace and prosperity? But this conscription notice came at just the right time. Now that she was a wanted criminal, it wasn't good for her to stay in the capital. If she was discovered, it would be even worse for the He family. Moreover, there didn't seem to be any benefits in staying in the capital. The He family was too far away from her, and the Su family was a high family that she couldn't reach. She still couldn't stand at the same height as them and ask for her own things. It was better to go to the barracks. She should go out of the city with the conscription team. That was where she should stay. There was always a way out. She was still thinking about how to find a reasonable reason to explain her departure to the He family's father and son. Now, she didn't need to think of other reasons because this was the only way. The conscription would end tomorrow. She just happened to be there the night before the deadline. He Yin smiled, and her mood was unusually relaxed. She no longer hesitated and walked in the direction of the horse track on the west side of the city with large strides. The horse track on the west side of the city was originally a horse farm, but since the conscription tents were set up here, the horses were all evacuated. In front of the long tent sat a red-faced man with a long saber on his waist. Because it was raining, he wore a felt hat on his head. His eyes were like copper bells, and he was imposing without being angry. He was dozing off intermittently. The conscription was coming to an end. After tomorrow, the newly recruited soldiers would follow them to Liangzhou. At this time, those who were willing to go had already come to cast their names, so there were no new people. He Yin walked forward, but the man didn't even lift his eyelids. He Yin could only say, "Big brother, has the conscription ended?" The big man looked her up and down and said slowly, "No, that's good." He Yin was happy. "I'm here to join the army. You?" The red-faced man showed a picky expression and said, "Brother, how old are you this year?" 16. 16. The man said in a low voice, "Your body doesn't look like 16. Usually, you don't do any heavy work at home, right? Joining the army is not a joke. If you're joking, go back early. Don't waste my time." "Big brother, I really want to join the army." He Yin thought about the brothers who came out of the barracks in the past and imitated their mournful expression. "There's no one at home, and I can't survive. If I don't join the army, I can only sell myself as a servant. It's better to go to the battlefield. Either I die on the battlefield, or I get a merit and can change my way of life. Besides, big brother." She leaned closer and whispered, "Now that there is a sudden conscription, I'm afraid that there is not enough manpower. It's better to have one more person, and we can make up a round number." The man was moved by her words, and he thought that it was reasonable. He just wanted to quickly gather enough people to complete the task, so he said, Okay. If you want to die, I won't stop you. But let me say the ugly words first. The barracks is not a place for pleasure. If you can't survive and want to be a deserter, you will be punished according to military law." "I won't be a deserter," He Yin vowed. The red-faced man sneered. He had seen a lot of young people like this. When they came, they were full of confidence. If they really went to war, they would be the ones who peed in their pants. "Then you fill in this document." He handed the document to He Yin. At the outskirts of the horse farm in the west of the city guards turned their horses around. In front of them was the Liangzhou recruitment tent, so there was no need to continue forward. He Yin scribbled down 2 words. This time, she used her own name. He Yin. Chapter 30. He Yin's handwriting was quite good. When the red-faced man saw it, he asked, "Can you read?" "I've learned a little." He Yin replied modestly. Most of the people who wanted to join the army were strong men. Only a few of them were literate. The red-faced man's expression softened as he looked at her and said, "You should go to the back of the tent to read first. Once you've passed, you'll receive a document and sign it. Then, you'll be registered as a soldier." He Yin thanked him and went to the back of the tent. His tent was closer to the inside of the horse farm, and the tent was also large. He lifted the curtain and went in. Inside, there was one person standing and one person sitting. A chubby, bare-chested man was sitting on a stool and putting on his shoes. He smiled and asked the person standing, "How is it? Is my body strong enough?" He pretended not to see him and walked in without looking sideways. When the chubby man saw her, he was surprised and said, "Such a weak person can also join the army?" The doctor in charge of reading urged him, "Hurry up and put on your shoes. I want to check the next person." The chubby man left. As he walked, he looked back at Yin with a puzzled expression. "Come here," the doctor said. "Take off your clothes and stand here." When joining the army and entering the barracks, they had to check their bodies to see if they were handicapped or infected. Yin was almost exposed when she joined the Fuyue army in her previous life. In this life, she was already prepared. She took out a silver coin from her sleeve and held the doctor's hand. Then, she stuffed the silver coin into the doctor's hand. The doctor was startled. He frowned and looked at her. "This, doctor, I won't hide it from you. I have an unmentionable disease." Yin lowered her head. She looked embarrassed and said, "It's because of this that I'm not well-liked and often bullied. I can't stay at home anymore, so I came out to join the army. Right now, I really don't want my flaws to be seen by others. I hope the doctor can make things easy for me. In the future, even if I die on the battlefield, I will remember your kindness and repay you even if I have to work like an ox or a horse in my next life." Dr. Ziwe thought that Yin was going to say something like an illness, but he didn't expect it to be a hidden illness. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. He was stunned for a while, and when he looked at Yin again, there was some sympathy in his eyes. He looked young and handsome, but he was actually a cripple? What a pity. No wonder he joined the army. Even if he did something else, he wouldn't be able to accomplish anything in this lifetime. Pinching the silver in his hand, it felt heavy. Yin was full of vigor and didn't seem to be sick. Seeing this, Dr. Zay said, "Since that's the case, I won't force you. You could go now. When you live with others, be careful. Don't be seen by others. If you're discovered, don't blame me." "Thank you, doctor." Yin cupped his fists in gratitude. Yin heaved a sigh of relief after passing the test so smoothly. When she came out of the tent, she saw the fat man sitting on the shur too beside the horse field. He was stuffing a sesame seed cake into his mouth. When he saw her, he waved at her, as if he was greeting her. Yin thought for a moment and walked over. "Little brother, I just saw you inside." The fat man finished the sesame seed cake in his hand in 2 or 3 bites. There were still sesame seeds on the corner of his mouth. He asked, "Are you here to join the army?" Yin nodded. When she saw the sesame seed cake left in his hand, she felt a bit hungry. She hadn't eaten anything since the afternoon. After being chased, her stomach was already rumbling with hunger. "Are you hungry?" The fat man saw her staring at his hand, so he reached out his hand. "Here, take it and eat. I just ate 5, so I'm full." She was really hungry, so Yin didn't refuse. She took the cake and said that she was hungry. Then she ate it in big mouthfuls. "You're so thin and weak, yet you're here to join the army. How can your family be at ease?" The fat man muttered, "You don't even look as brave as my 10-year-old brother." Yin swallowed a mouthful of sesame seed cake and took a moment to answer, "Well, I just look thin and weak, but I have a lot of strength. I'm 16 this year." "Why did you join the army?" The fat man asked. "You don't look like a rough person. My family has fallen, and I'm at the end of my rope." Yin only said 8 words. The fat man had a look of understanding and said sympathetically, "Life is unpredictable. Little brother, you don't have to worry too much. In the future, you can follow me and be my little brother. I will protect you." "Thank you, big brother." Yin answered smoothly. This big brother pleased the fat man. He smiled and said, "My surname is Hong Shan. You can call me Brother Shan in the future." "Little brother, what's your surname?" "My surname is He. Yin, as in firewood. He. This surname is rare. In the future, I'll call you a He." "Okay." Yin nodded. While they were talking, she had already finished the sesame seed cake. She wiped her mouth, found a former stable, and sat down leaning against the railing. When Hong Shan saw this, he asked curiously, "Little brother, you're not going home?" "I'm not going back." Hien supported her head with both hands. "I'm staying here." The sympathy in Hong Shan's eyes deepened. He sat down next to her and said, "I have nowhere to go. Let's stay here for one night. After tomorrow, we'll set off together." "That would be great." In the distance, the torches outside the tent were flickering in the rain, as if they were going to be extinguished in the next moment. The two of them sat in the darkness and silence, each thinking about something. "I wonder how Hien is doing in Yinsheng. Did he reach home safely?" Hien thought to herself and unknowingly fell asleep. Countless things happened in the capital every day. No one paid attention to the affairs of the poor, but if it was related to the rich, everyone would know. Last night, there was a murder case on the Chunlai River. The young master of the Fan family in the capital was killed on a boat. The murderer escaped and disappeared. Until now, the culprit had not been caught. At that time, the daughter of the guard at the gate was also on the boat. She was also killed by the murderer and drowned in the river. With such a cruel murderer in the capital, everyone was in a state of panic. However, there were also people who clapped their hands and cheered. The young master of the Fan family had always used his family's power to deceive and defile the common girls. The girls did not dare to speak out when they suffered losses. Now that someone was enforcing justice, perhaps the heavens had opened their eyes. The He family was in a miserable state. Ian seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. He sat in the hall in a daze, like a clay statue. Qing Mei and Shuang Qing hid in the courtyard. Shuang Qing looked bitter. Qing Mei wiped her tears and whispered, "Why is it suddenly gone?" In the simple stable, He Yunxing sat next to Xiang Xiang. The fodder was the same as yesterday's. He Yunxing was not in the mood to add more fodder. The horse was pacing back and forth a little irritably. He Yunxing was unmoved. No news was good news. At least until now, Hien had not been caught. He remembered that on the boat, the night rain covered the smell of blood. He was confused and helpless. The girl in the long dress had bright eyes. She touched his head and said to him, "You know, I'm fine every time. This time, it will be fine, definitely." Chapter 31. Spring was coming to an end, and even the rain was beginning to have the heat of summer. The last day of the conscription had ended. The long tabs for filling in paperwork at the racetrack had been closed and were replaced by countless small tabs. After bidding farewell to their families, the other recruits had already gathered. After tonight, they would set off for Liangzhou the next morning. The tent was very small, and it was barely enough for a few people to squeeze in. Hien and Hong Shan sat next to each other. Hong Shan had taken a slightly larger tent, and because they didn't have much luggage, it was quite spacious. From last night to tonight, Hien had stayed here for an entire day. Here, they would give him steamed buns to eat, 2 at a time. When they settled down in Liangzhou, they would give him more. There was nothing else, except that it was inconvenient to go to the outhouse. Hien had to wait until it was late at night, when no one was around, to sneak in. As soon as she came out of the outhouse, she walked to her tent and lifted the flap. There were 2 more people inside. Hong Shan was talking to them. Hearing the noise, the 2 men turned around to look. They were probably a pair of brothers, and they looked somewhat similar. They were tanned and thin, and had a kind of honest and handsome aura. They weren't old. The older one was about 16 or 17 years old, and the younger one looked about the same age as He Yunxing. The older one was probably the older one, and he was taciturn. The younger one was probably the younger one. When he saw Yin, he smiled and asked as if they were close friends, This is your older brother, He Go." Hong Shan helped Yin to recognize a younger brother, and then said to Yin, "These are the 2 new brothers today. There's no tent outside, so they'll be squeezing in here with us." He pointed to the taciturn young man. "This is sure too." Then he pointed to the young man with a simple and honest smile. "This is Xiao Mai." Sure too, Xiao Mai. They were probably brothers from poor families. Otherwise, a better family would have given them good names. Ian found a place to sit down. With 2 more people, the tent suddenly seemed a little crowded. "Are you from the capital?" Ian asked. He felt a little thirsty, so he unscrewed the water bottle at his waist and took a sip. Sure, Tu didn't like to talk, but his younger brother, Xiao Mai, was very lively. He said, "We live on Xianghuai Mountain and spend our days hunting. The last time we went down the mountain, we saw that they were recruiting soldiers. After discussing it with my brother, we decided to join the army. It turned out to be a family of hunters on the mountain. Your parents might want you to join the army?" Hong Shan asked. Generally speaking, even if one's family was poor and wanted to join the army, they wouldn't let their two sons join together. They had to leave a way out for their family. My parents are long gone. I grew up with my brother. Hong Shan sighed. Then you should cherish your lives even more. Why did you come here to join the army? It's not fun to join the army. Don't tell me you. He pouted in He Yan's direction. You want to make a name for yourself like him, right? A real man should make a name for himself, Xiao Mai said naively. Besides, this time, the commander of the army to Liangzhou is the right military governor Xiao. My brother and I have admired him for a long time. It's our honor to be able to work for him. Ian was drinking water while listening to them talk. When he heard this, he spat out a mouthful of water and almost choked. Everyone in the tent looked at her. Who do you think is going to Liangzhou to be the commander? She asked. Xiao Mai thought she didn't know military governor Xiao, so he deliberately explained, "It's the current General Feng Yun, the second son of the Xiao family, Xiao Huaijin." Ian's heart trembled. How could Xiao Ju go to Liangzhou to be the commander? With his official position, he didn't need to go to Liangzhou. Besides, he had his own troops and horses. Why would he bring a new soldier to Liangzhou? Unless he was demoted. Xiao Ju was demoted? Xiao family in the capital. Xiao family's residence was specially renovated according to his wife's preferences when old General Xiao was still alive. Xiao family's later generations never changed the layout of the courtyard. Therefore, although they were a military family, the courtyard was renovated to be as elegant and unique as a small courtyard in Suzhou. Past the flower wall was the main room. Next to the main room was a pomegranate tree. It wasn't time to bear fruit yet. Looking in from a window, one could see yellow pine shelves full of books. Someone was sitting at the table reading. The young man was fair and beautiful, but his expression was indifferent and a bit lazy. Because he was in his own residence, he dressed casually. He wore a brocade robe with cloud patterns and a green jade belt, which made him look even more handsome. There was a sword hanging on the wall. The color was like frost and snow, sparkling and translucent. Although it wasn't unsheathed, one could see its majesty. The door was pushed open and someone walked in. It was a man and a woman. The man was 70% similar to Xiao Ju. However, he wasn't as cold as Xiao Ju. He was more gentle and bright. He was Xiao Ju's elder brother, Xiao Jing. Next to Xiao Jing was his wife by Ronwei. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she was still a beautiful and dignified woman with white teeth. The husband and wife stood together like a jade couple. It was very pleasing to the eye. Huaijin, by Ronwei spoke. She put the package in Xiao Jing's hands on the table and said, "These are the shoes and clothes that we prepared for your trip to Liangzhou. Try them on later." Ever since General Xiao and his wife passed away, the Xiao family only had Xiao Jing and Xiao Ju. The eldest sister-in-law was like a mother. In the past, General Zhao's wife sewed clothes for Xiao Ju. Now it was by Ronwei. "Thank you, eldest sister-in-law." Xiao Ju nodded. Bai Ronwei smiled and said, "You brothers talk. I'll go see if the soup is ready." Then she left. After Bai Ronwei left, Xiao Jing stared at Xiao Ju for a moment. Finally, he sighed and said, "Huaijin, you really don't need to go to Liangzhou. Recently, Su Jiefu has been targeting you in court. He's looking for trouble with the Xiao family." Xiao Ju's expression didn't change. He only said, "If the emperor listens to Su Jingfu's words, I'll be causing trouble in the capital. It's good to go to Liangzhou for a while. Moreover, there are many suspicious things about father's death. Now that there are clues, perhaps there will be new discoveries." Speaking of General Zhao's death, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy. After a moment of silence, Xiao Jing reached out and patted Xiao Ju's shoulder. "You always think more than I do, but there's nothing I can do for you. Eldest brother situation in court is much more complicated. When I'm not here, the Xiao family depends on eldest brother." Xiao Ju smiled and looked at Xiao Jing. Eldest brother, take care of yourself. You take care too. Xiao Jing sighed with emotion. Perhaps in order to lighten the bitter atmosphere, he deliberately joked. It's not that I don't want you to go to Liangzhou. It's just that you're now 20 years old, and it's time for you to get engaged. Of the girls that your sister-in-law helped you find, do you like any of them? Hearing this, Xiao Ju's smile disappeared. His expression became even more indifferent. No need. I don't plan on getting married. Chapter 32. The capital had been peaceful for the past few days, but there were undercurrents in the imperial court. Spring had finally come to an end, and after summer had begun, the continuous rain seemed to be endless. The entire city was covered in misty rain. Right Army Commander Xiao Huijin volunteered to be the commander and led the new soldiers to the Liang Province Guard. After Xiao Huijin left, the situation in the imperial court changed again. The Crown Prince's faction was elated, and the word happy was almost written on their faces. The common people still had no way of coming into contact with the matters of the imperial court, and they continued to live their daily lives. A few days ago, the capital Fan family's young master had been killed, and the murderer had still not been found. The Fan family had searched everywhere for the murderer, but they had failed, so they vented their anger on Lady Fan. Who would have thought that Madame Fan's family, the Minister of Household, was not an ordinary person? After waiting for a long time, after the 7th day of Fan Cheng's death, he forced Master Fan to write a letter to release his wife and take his daughter back to the manor. Tang Ying was in her prime, and her husband had died shortly after she married. How could the Tang family allow her to become a widow at such a young age? Naturally, they had a plan for her future. She and Fan Cheng had no children, so the Fan family could do nothing. In comparison, Hien, who had been killed along with Fan Cheng and drowned in the Chunlai River, had become an insignificant supporting character in this incident. He didn't even have the right to be discussed. Other than the He family, no one mentioned him. It was as if Hien had never existed in this world. He and Sheng went out wearing a bamboo hat as the rain grew heavier. After Hien's accident, he had temporarily stopped going to the academy. Hien had told him to go to the Willow Spring residence to collect the letter in 5 days. Today was already the 10th day, and He Sheng finally found some time to go out. He was afraid that the Fan family would be waiting outside to observe his movements. Hien had fought so hard for the opportunity for the He family, so he couldn't let it be ruined in his hands. In the past few days, he had already looked around the house. The Fan family watching the He family had all withdrawn, and only then did he feel at ease to go out. He changed into an old set of clothes so that he wouldn't attract any attention. He lowered his head and wore a bamboo hat as he walked out of the back door, braving the rain. He Yinsheng lived a life worse than death for the past 10 days. He couldn't fall asleep every night. He wanted to hear news about Hien, but he was also afraid to hear news about Hien. Luckily, 10 days had passed, and the authorities had not caught Hien yet. Perhaps from another perspective, Hien was safe. But he couldn't help but think, Hien is still in the capital. Where can she go? Other than the He family, she didn't have any other friends, so she was bound to wander about. Did she eat well? Did she sleep well? Did she get bullied? Thinking of this, He Yinsheng quickened his pace. The reason why Willow Spring Restaurant was called Willow Spring Restaurant was because there was a spring at the back door of the restaurant. Beside the spring was a row of willow trees. There were not many people in the tavern on this rainy day. He Yinsheng went in without anyone noticing. He still remembered what He Yin said at that time. Go to the west of the city. There is a tavern called Willow Spring Restaurant. There is a row of willow trees in front of the tavern. Find the 3rd willow tree from the left and dig 3 inches down. I will leave a letter for you there. He Yinsheng squatted down. He dug 3 inches down from the 3rd willow tree from the left. The soil that he dug out was still wet from the rain. As he dug, his fingers touched something hard. He Yinsheng's heart skipped a beat. His hands moved even faster. A moment later, he dug out an oiled paper bag. He didn't immediately open it to take a look. He only put the oiled paper bag into his arms and quickly filled it with the soil he dug out. Then he turned and left the tavern. After he left, he trotted back home. When he got home, He Sui wasn't there. He Yinsheng went back to his room, locked the door, and took out the paper bag. He had been holding it in his arms, so the paper bag wasn't wet. It was well protected. He Yinsheng opened the paper bag with trembling hands and saw what was inside. There was a piece of clothing and a letter. He Yinsheng opened the letter first. The letter was probably written in a hurry. The paper was crumpled and the handwriting was sloppy. It was probably flour paper used to wrap snacks for others. There were still oil stains on it. On the side, without patterns, there were a few lines of flamboyant words written with a brush. I have joined the army and am go to Liangzhou. The mountains are long and the rivers are wide. After the cold spring, the hot summer follows. I hope you will cherish yourself. When we meet again in the future, please take care. He Yinsheng stared blankly at the few lines of words as if he didn't recognize them. After a moment, he finally understood. He gritted his teeth and went to take the clothing. It was a summer shirt made by the old tailor. When He Yin parted with him that day, they each wore one in order to disguise themselves. This one was neatly folded by He Yin and sent back. The material was very cold. When he touched it, he seemed to see the cool smile on the girl's face that day and her comforting words. Don't worry, we will meet again. The room was silent. After a moment, someone choked with sobs. Liar, He Yin, who was called a liar, didn't know that he was being scolded behind his back. Speaking of which, they were already on the way from the capital to Liangzhou. This time, they recruited less than 20,000 soldiers. There were new recruits on the way. Now that summer had arrived, the journey became difficult. It was fine to leave early, but by noon, they were sweating profusely. Hong Shan sat on the grass, eating dry food and picking up a leaf to fan himself. It was so hot that he grimaced. Damn it, the weather is too hot. When will we reach the end? It will take more than 2 months to reach Liangzhou from here. He poured water into his mouth. Take it slow. I miss the mung bean soup in the capital. Xiaomai smacked her lips. Put it in a bowl and soak it in the well for a few hours. Sprinkle some sugar on it. It's sweet and cold. It really quenches thirst. His description was so detailed that the people who listened swallowed their saliva. Don't talk about it. We're soldiers. Don't talk about mung bean soup. It's good enough that we don't starve. Hong Shan sighed. If we want to eat it, we may have to wait until we receive a reward and get promoted. Then we can eat it, just like military governor Xiao. He Yin laughed in his heart when he mentioned Xiao Ju. She joined the army and followed everyone to Liangzhou. They traveled day and night and slept in a tent in the wilderness. Even so, she didn't even see Xiao Ju. He and his men rode at the front of the team. The tent they stayed in at night was different from the tent of the soldiers. In addition, He Yin knew that Xiao Ju was the most fastidious person when he was in the Xianchao mansion. The second son of a Xiao family was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Even the princess was not as fastidious about his food and clothing. Thinking about it, even if they were traveling now, his life was much better than theirs. They were both young generals, but they had different fates. Now that she was reborn, she had actually become a soldier under his command. He Yin sighed. Who would believe it if he said it out loud? She still wanted to earn military merits and get promoted quickly. However, Xiao Ju was very picky. It was not easy to become a soldier under him. What could she do? She had already been registered in the military register. She could only look at it as she walked. Chapter 33. The 2-month journey from the capital to Liangzhou was not an easy one. They had to clear a path and fill a bridge when they met a river. By the time they reached Liangzhou, everyone was exhausted and had lost a lot of weight. He Yin sat by the lake and looked at herself in the water. Lady used to have fair skin, but after 2 months of traveling under the sun, she didn't even need to wipe the dust off her face. She was the same color as Xiaomai. If the real Lady He came back now, she would definitely want to strangle herself. She suddenly had this thought. She found it funny and laughed. Why is he laughing so happily? Xiaomai asked. Hong Shan glanced at He Yin by the lake and said with understanding, If we walk for another half a day, we'll be able to reach Liangzhou before dark. The bitter days are coming to an end. How can we not be happy? That's true, Xiaomai agreed and said to Shirtu, Big brother, are you happy? The taciturn Shirtu also nodded. The 2-month journey was indeed not a human task. Even though most of the people who came to join the army were poor and suffer hardships, it was still much harder than they had imagined. Some of the people with poor health had already died on the way. They didn't have time to reach Liangzhou and couldn't return to the capital. This was a path of no return. In the evening, the army finally reached Liangzhou. Liangzhou was located in the northwest. They thought it was desolate and barren, but when they arrived, they found that it was quite prosperous. Even though it couldn't be compared to the capital, it was still lively and rich. He followed everyone forward. He thought that Xiao Ju really knew how to pick a place. Liangzhou was much better than the Mo County, where she joined the army. When she went to the Mo County, there was nothing there. The people couldn't even afford to eat. The soldiers were the ones who had a really hard time. When they arrived at Liangzhou, they first had to go to the Liangzhou Guards. The Liangzhou Guards were stationed at the foot of Mount Baiwei. There was a large open space at the foot of Mount Baiwei that could be used as a training ground. They could stay in tents at night, but now they were all staying in the Liangzhou Guards' office. With so many people, there weren't enough rooms in the office. They could only squeeze a dozen people into a small room and sleep on a large shared bed. He naturally stayed with Hong Shan and Shi too. They didn't have any luggage, so they found a shared bed and relaxed. I saw a river nearby, Xiao Mai excitedly said. Many people are bathing in the river. Let's go, too. Okay, I'm already sweating from the heat. Hong Shan took off his coat and was about to run out. Mama looked at He Yin. Brother He, you not going? He. The first time Hong Shan invited her to bathe in the river, He Yin explained that she had once drowned when she was young. Since then, whenever she went into the water, she would feel dizzy and short of breath. Hong Shan didn't suspect her. To be honest, He Yin wasn't lying. She was really afraid of water now. But He Yin lay down on the shared bed. Creak. She couldn't help but frown. For a moment, she didn't know if it was because she was too skinny or because the bedboard was too hard. After a while, she could only sigh in her heart. It's easy to go from frugal to extravagant, but difficult to go from extravagant to frugal. She had lived in the barracks for 3 years, but she had only been young Mistress Su for 1 year. She was already used to the soft bed and felt that the bedboard made her angry. Xiao Ju was still the best. His bed should be soft. He felt that it was unfair. She rested in the room for a while until Hong Shan and the others came back. Then, she followed them to the guard's office to eat. Today was the first day. For the past 2 months, they had been eating dry rations and clear water on the road. It was their first meal in Liangzhou, and they finally had a hot meal. Even a simple porridge and buns were piping hot. The recruits were all sitting on the ground and eating heartily. Those who didn't know better would think that they were eating some delicacies. The meat filling of this bun is only a little bit big. Hong Shan complained while licking his fingers. It's not satisfying. It's good enough to have a hot meal. He said, it's better than dry rations. It's okay. I just asked around. There are many wild animals and rabbits on Mount Baiwei. Xiao Mai smiled and said, Brother and I can go hunting. If we catch a rabbit or wild boar, we can wash it clean and string on a branch. Or we can wrap in a leaf and sprinkle some salt on it. Then we can roast it. It's delicious. Xiao Mai was a foodie. Every sentence she said was about food. Hong Shan became hungrier after hearing her words. He finished the porridge in front of him in one gulp and slammed it on the table. Damn it. I can't wait to go up the mountain now. There's a military order about not going up the mountain without permission. He poured cold water on them. There will be a time when we go up the mountain. Hong Shan didn't agree. After eating and drinking to their fill, everyone simply tidied up. The commander of the training had already informed them in advance that they would gather at the training field at 5 in the morning tomorrow. Today, they would rest early. He followed Hong Shan back to his room in the guard's office. There were already many people in the room. Some were already asleep, while others were still chatting. They couldn't hold back their excitement. He slept in the innermost part of the bunk. One side of him was next to Xiao Mai, while the other side leaned against the wall. He heard Hong Shan say cheerfully on the other end, compared to the previous hurried journey, this is the life of an immortal. They had food, water, baths, and beds to sleep in. They didn't have to be exposed to the sun and rain outside. They also didn't have to be bothered by mosquitoes at night. It indeed looked much better than before. Xiao Mai said softly, "If we train the soldiers here, I think it's easier than hunting in the mountains. And there's so many people here. We can play together." Ian, silly child. How could anyone say that training soldiers was easier than hunting in the capital? These people were all joining the army for the first time. They only thought that their future would be as easy as tonight. But this was like a prisoner on death row who had to eat a meal before he was executed. After this meal, it would be their last meal. Tonight would be the most relaxing night they had ever spent in Liangzhou. Starting tomorrow, the real torture would begin. Ian closed his eyes. He would let these silly children have their sweet dreams for a while. Sure enough, the next morning, before the sun had even risen, the loud sound of a horn could be heard from the open space outside the guard's office. "Oh, it's so early. Can't you sleep a little longer?" Xiao Mai turned over and rubbed her eyes. She found that Yin had already finished dressing and was standing in front of the bed. "Go. Why are you so early?" he asked sleepily. "You didn't answer my call, didn't show up at the appointed time, and didn't show up on time. This is called a slow soldier. You will be punished with a military rod," she said with a smile. She didn't look drowsy at all, as if she wasn't tired at all. "If you don't want to be flogged, get up quickly." Chapter 34. On a summer day, it was already dawn. They woke up even earlier than before. It was their first time arriving in Liangzhou last night, so everyone was excited and couldn't help but sleep late. When they arrived at the training field, everyone was sleepy and some even wore their shoes inside out. Tu was fine, but Xiao Mai and Hongshan were walking while tying their belts. The two saw that Yin was full of energy and asked in confusion, aren't you sleepy?" "I slept early last night, so I slept enough," Yin replied. Xiao Mai praised. "You're amazing." As they spoke, they had already arrived at the training field. Because today was the first day, they still lined up according to their previous schedule. On the high platform stood a strong man wearing a red suit. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes, and he was tall like a tree. He held a long spear in his hand and looked very impressive. "Who is that?" Yin asked. "He's the instructor in charge of supervising our training, Shun Jiaodo." Xiao Mai was a nosy person, so she had already asked around. Yin nodded, but in her heart, she thought that Xiao Ju would personally come to train the soldiers. She didn't expect that she wouldn't even see him today. Speaking of which, although they were all young men who joined the army and were conferred the title of general, every general had their own way of training soldiers. Yin wanted to see Xiao Ju's methods and secretly learn from him. However, it seemed that it was impossible for now. "I'm your chief instructor, Shun Han." Shun Jiaodo's voice was like a bell. The training field at the foot of Mount Baiwei was surrounded by mountains, so listening to his voice made one's scalp tingle. "From today onwards, I'll be leading you." He shook the military register. "Now let's start the roll." The roll call had to be fast. Today was the first roll call. After a few days, the soldiers would be divided into 5, 100, 1 brigade, and 1 division. Then, the appointed 5 commanders, 100 commanders, 1 brigade commanders, and 1,000 commanders would be in charge of the roll call, saving a lot of time. This group of people were all unaffiliated soldiers recruited from the capital. In the past, they had never received any training. After listening to someone call out the soldiers for several hours, they could only stand in the martial arts arena. He only felt uncomfortable all over and moved his body from time to time. Xiao Mai whispered to her brother, "Big brother, Ehigu isn't moving. It looks like a piece of Shirtu." Shirtu looked at Yin. Compared to him, Yin seemed to be more deserving of this name. She stood as straight as a pine tree with her arms by her side. Her eyes were bright as she looked at the high platform. She didn't seem to be tired or bored. It gave people the illusion that she could still stand like this even after 2 hours. Shirtu thought of the time when he and Xiao Mai hunted in the mountains. There were wild beasts in the mountains. When the wild beasts caught wild hares, they also hid quietly in the grass without moving. At first glance, they looked like a lifeless piece of Shirtu. He had hunted with Xiao Mai for so many years. He was fine, but Xiao Mai couldn't help but come down. Why was he unable to do it? He heard from the Hong Shan that He Yin joined the army because his family was in dire straits. Looking at his appearance, he seemed to have a good family background. Why did such a person have the patience and perseverance of a wild beast? After all, He Yin didn't need to hunt. He didn't get an answer from his contemplation. The roll call was over. Shun Jiaodo closed the military register book and said, "From today onwards, 100 people will form a team. Each team will have one instructor. You will train here, set up formations, and practice how to charge. Today, I will be teaching you military orders." At this point, Shun Han's face revealed a smile. For some reason, when everyone saw this smile, they only felt a chill in their hearts. Sure enough, they heard Shun Han shout, "You didn't answer the call, you didn't arrive on time, and you didn't arrive on time." This is called a slow-moving army. Those who break this rule will be whipped. Today, you are late by a minute. You should be punished according to military law. However, since this is your first offense, I will be lenient. Everyone's hearts were beating up and down after hearing his words. As soon as they landed, they heard the stern instructor's emotionless voice. "Everyone, carry sandbags and run laps around the barracks. 10 laps. You can't miss a single lap. Each team's instructor will be guarding you. Whoever dares to slack off will be punished according to military law." Everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. The training field at the foot of Mount Baiwe was the barracks. 1 lap was at least 1 li long. 10 laps was more than 10 li long. They still had to carry sandbags. When they woke up early, it was still early and they didn't feel hot. Now, after the roll call, the sun was high in the sky. It was hot and hanging above their heads. Just standing there made them sweat nonstop. They had to run laps under the sun. The surrounding area was suddenly filled with wailing. Xiaomai said, "Ehigu, what Shun Jiaodo said is exactly the same as what you said." "Hey, how did you know that he would say that?" How did she know? Naturally, it was because when she entered the barracks, it was the same situation. Just like the killing stick, the new recruits were first put in their place and let them know that they didn't join the army to enjoy life. Even if it wasn't for this, Shin Han would find some other reason to punish them. Remember more military orders. He Yin patted the young man's shoulder. "It's good for you." Xiaomai nodded, not fully understanding. Sure enough, according to what Shin Han said, there were so many soldiers and they were divided into teams of 100 people. Everyone went to collect sandbags. He Yin initially thought that the sandbags were the size of a palm, just like the ones she and Yinsheng used to chop firewood in the mountains. They could be tied to the legs. However, when he reached the end, his eyelids twitched. That sandbag was the size of a bundle. It wasn't tied to the legs, but carried on the back. It was heavy to carry and definitely not comparable to her sandbag. "Damn it, running 10 laps with this thing on your back. That's too much." Hong Shan shouted. Xiaomai secretly looked at He Yan's expression. He Yan's calm face finally cracked when he picked up the sandbag. Xiaomai secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that Ehigu was also an ordinary person and wasn't omnipotent. He Yan didn't know what to say. When she was training the new recruits, in order to increase their physical strength, it was necessary to run with weights. However, it was done step by step. Most of the time, she used the sandbags she made in the He family. They increased the weight little by little. In the past, she didn't know about Xiao Ju's training methods. Now, she finally knew. Xiao Ju was so fierce right from the start. She didn't expect Xiao Ju to be so ruthless, even though she had a beautiful face. She still underestimated how ruthless Xiao Ju could be. She was a ruthless person. Hong Shan was about to ask if she needed his help to carry the sandbag on her back, when He Yin picked up the sandbag and tied it to her body. She was too thin and small. In the military camp full of men, she looked like a teenager who hadn't grown up yet. The sandbag was big and heavy, and when it was on her back, it seemed to make her shorter. She looked very pitiful and tottering. Shi Tu was a man of few words, but he couldn't stand it anymore. He only said to her, "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." Ian smiled at him. When they saw her smiling face, they were slightly relieved. They thought that she was still a young and strong man. Although she looked thin and weak, she still had strength. He cursed Xiao Ju a million times in her heart. With such a load, it was naturally no problem for her to pass. However, Lady He had a delicate body. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't turn Lady He into Hercules overnight. Therefore, it was really heavy. Chapter 35. 100 people formed teams and set off in order. It was a spectacular sight to see a mighty team running around the barracks at the foot of the mountain. Although everyone was complaining and yelling, they didn't delay anything. The instructor in charge of Yan's team was called Liang Ping, and his surname was Liang. He was as fierce and ruthless as Chief Instructor Shan. He said, "Quick, get into formation and set off." At his command, everyone followed the team and started a run with weights. Yan was carrying such a big sandbag on her back. She felt like she was carrying a piece of sure too, and she couldn't keep her balance. Ever since she became Lady He, she accompanied He Yinsheng to the mountains to chop firewood every day. However, she could only make her weak body healthy, or at least a little stronger than other girls her age. However, Xiao Ju's iron-blooded training method was really too much for her. He Yin in the past could do it, but He Yin in the present was very difficult. There were people constantly overtaking He Yin. Most of the people who came to join the army were tall and strong. Even those who weren't so tall were mostly from poor families and used to heavy labor. Although running with a sandbag was tiring, it was still okay. There were very few people as weak as He Yin. Only a few of them died on the way to Liangzhou. It could be said that in the Liangzhou guard station at the foot of Mount Baiwei, He Yin was the weakest one in terms of physical aptitude. Shirtu and Xiao Mai ran very fast. They hunted in the mountains and often had to chase after prey. Once they caught the prey, they tied it to their bodies. They were used to running around with the prey, so it was quite easy for them. Hong Shan was probably older. After running one round, he was panting. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "Sai, this is really inhumane." He didn't hear He Yan's reply. When he turned around, He Yan was already more than 10 steps behind him. He slowed down slightly and waited for He Yan to catch up. He asked, "He, can you still hold on? You look a little uncomfortable." He Yan's face was pale. Large beads of sweat rolled down from his forehead to his chin and into his clothes. Carrying a sandbag on his back, he looked just like those children on the docks in the capital who were sold by their parents to do manual labor for the gang leader. It was a pitiful sight. "I'm fine. Brother Shan, you don't have to worry about me. You run first. I can't run fast, so let me run slowly behind you." He Yan smiled and said, "You can rest in the shed after you finish running. Don't wait for me." "Why don't you tell the head instructor?" Hong Shan said hesitantly. Seeing that no one was paying attention to them, he leaned closer and whispered, "Where you can secretly run fewer laps. No one will see you anyway. I know what I'm doing." He Yan laughed. "Brother Shan, you go first. We'll meet up later." Hong Shan repeatedly confirmed that He Yan did not need help before he ran off with the sandbags. He Yan scratched his head and smiled helplessly. Did the instructor say he couldn't do it? How could that be possible? Once he entered the military, he would have to do it even if he couldn't. Secretly run fewer laps? How is that possible? Although there was no one around, the instructors were very smart. There were also hidden guards on the side of the road. If he really ran fewer laps, it would be a violation of military discipline. He would be dragged out and beaten. She knew this when she was a general. When she was a soldier, there was no reason for her to hide. But she wiped away the sweat on her eyelids and looked at the golden sun hanging above her head. It was so hot. Someone walked out of the city guard station. Chung Lisu fanned himself with a folding fan and looked at the mountain peak covered by clouds in the distance. He said happily, "The scenery here is so good. It's 10,000 times more beautiful than the capital. Uncle has such good taste." Xiao Ju followed behind him. She was wearing a black gold robe embroidered with cloud patterns. There was a long sword at her waist. Her eyes were like stars, and her lips were red. She was talented and beautiful. She looked like a noble child who happened to pass by. She added a layer of color to this bitter cold place. "They're running. TSK, TSK, TSK. Chung Lisu shook her head. "If I had to do this, I definitely wouldn't be able to last 15 minutes. Then you should go back." What answered her was cold mockery. "Ah, what did you say?" The wind is so strong, I can't hear. Uncle, look who's here. Chung Li-su stiffly changed the topic. The person who came was Shan Han, Shan Jiaodo. He stopped in front of the two and bowed to Xiao Ju. Commander-in-Chief, how are the new recruits? Xiao Ju asked. They look pretty good. There are a few who can't do it, but they'll get better after some practice. Shan Han replied. What's wrong with that person? Chung Li-su pointed in the distance. He looks like he's about to kneel down. On the long road, there was a short young man running. Although he was running too slowly. He had already pulled away from the group in front of him. In fact, he looked so weak that the sandbag on his back was heavier than his body. That's Liang Ping's soldier. He's running his fourth lap. Fourth lap. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. The rest of the people had already started their seventh lap, but this person had only started his fourth lap. He was so far behind. He said lightly, his aptitude is too poor. Chung Li-su and Shan Han looked at each other and didn't say anything. If Xiao Ju said that his aptitude was too poor, it meant that he was really poor and couldn't go on the battlefield. It's okay if his aptitude is too poor. Chung Li-su thought of something and smiled. It's not bad to be a squad leader. What if his skills are good? Yin, who was hoped that his skills would be good, was running so fast that he didn't know what to say. The sandbag on her back was really heavy, but she had to continue. She clearly understood that the current physical training was just the beginning. After a period of time, they would gradually increase the training of skills, such as bows, knives, and arrows. However, if she couldn't even endure the physical training, she wouldn't be qualified to continue the training of skills and would be directly thrown out to be a squad leader. She didn't want to be a squad leader. Near the pergola, Hongshan finished his last lap and finally found Xiao Mai and Tu resting in the pergola. He went over and sat down next to them. Xiao Mai looked around and asked, Where's Ehiga? Hasn't he come out yet? I don't know. I didn't see him. Hongshan was also a little worried. Could it be that this guy can't run anymore and won't come out? Didn't he tell Higu to secretly run 2 laps less? Xiao Mai whispered. Anyway, no one saw. I told him long ago. This guy is a stubborn donkey. He doesn't listen to me. What can I do? Hongshan spread out his hands. As the two of them were talking, Tu suddenly said, He's here. They followed his gaze and saw a young man running slowly towards them from the end of the long path in the forest. The sandbag on his back was too big for his body. His hair was wet in clumps, and beads of sweat slowly dripped from his forehead to his chin and sank into the soil under his feet. He ran past the pergola, but didn't look in their direction. Instead, he continued to run forward and started a new lap. He's still running. Xiao Mai murmured. He didn't stop. Chapter 36. The 6th lap, the 7th lap. When Ian finished the last lap, he felt as if he had just been fished out of the water. Xiao Mai ran over and handed him a water bottle. Ehiga, drink some. Ian tilted his head back and gulped down the water. While he was drinking, Liang Jiaodo walked past him. He looked at him from head to toe, shook his head, and left. His gaze clearly said that Yin could only be a squad leader. Why did you finish? Hongshan said, You're so stubborn. I saw that there were other people who didn't run much. They're smarter than you. Yin was so tired that he didn't want to talk. He only said, I don't want to be a squad leader. What's wrong with being a squad leader? Don't underestimate a squad leader. They might even live longer than us. Hongshan didn't think much of it. I think so too. Xiao Mai looked forward to it. If I'm a squad leader, I can cook for everyone. I can cook more delicious food. Yin, if you want to cook, you should be a chef. You shouldn't be here to join the army. Xiao Mai looked at Tu with an aggrieved expression. Big brother asked me to come. What kind of people are they? Yin looked up at the sky and sighed in his heart. She was so tired that her legs felt like jelly. Hongshan and Xiao Mai helped her walk forward and sighed. It's only the first day. How long can you last? Yin thought to himself. I'll last as long as I can. That day passed in exhaustion. Chief Instructor Shun's face was cold and emotionless. He caught the few soldiers who were lazing around in the afternoon and punished them in front of everyone. They screamed even more miserably than chickens. This was a warning to others. At least during the afternoon training, no one dared to laze around anymore. Just as Ian thought, the first half of the month was physical training. It was nothing more than running with weights, standing under the sun, and lining up. Half a month later, they would begin their skill training. Once they had trained for a certain amount of time, they would begin to split up. Ian was in the Vanguard Battalion in her previous life. She still wanted to enter the Vanguard Battalion. However, the problem was that with Xiao Ju's training method, she would be eliminated before she reached the Vanguard Battalion. After all, her physical strength was her weakness now. She thought as she ate the porridge in the bowl. The porridge was thick rice porridge with all kinds of wild vegetables, fruits, beans, and the like. Half a bucket of rice in the morning and a third of a bucket of millet for dinner. Occasionally, there would be some dough balls. If it was good, there would also be soup pancakes and meat. However, it was just the beginning. There was only porridge. It was originally a bland meal, but because he was really too tired today, he already felt hungry. Almost no one spoke at the dining area. Everyone was engrossed in eating. If only there was wine. Hong Shan smacked his lips. Now I finally understand why you shouldn't join the army unless you have nowhere else to go. This is not something a human would do. I want to hunt. Xiao Mai bitterly curled her lips at Shirt, too. Big brother, I want to eat roasted rabbit. Shirt, too. Wait a few days. Ian found it funny. Wait a few days. Even if they waited a month, they would not have the opportunity to hunt. If they wanted to run away after entering the army camp, they would be considered deserters. Deserters would be beheaded. After dinner, everyone went to take a bath. Hong Shan hesitated for a moment and asked, "Hey, you really don't want to go?" After being in the sun for the whole day, he was covered in sweat. His whole body smelled of sweat and was sticky. The river was already crowded with people. Hong Shan said, "Don't be afraid. I'll hold on to you. I guarantee that you won't fall." Ian looked troubled. "Forget it, Brother Shan. When it's late, I'll go to the river to get a few buckets of water and wash them to shallows." "Okay, then." Hong Shan did not force him. "You rest first." Ian breathed a sigh of relief after Hong Shan and the others left. This was probably one of the inconveniences of entering the army camp. As a lowly soldier, they did not have a separate room in the guard station or a separate tent in the wilderness. Taking a bath was a big problem. Because of this, she used to live a restrained life. Every night when she slept, she had to be careful not to let the cat out of the bag. However, as she gradually got promoted, she became a deputy general and then a chief general. She had her own tent and room, so this was no longer a problem. She did not expect that she would have to walk the same path as before. Ian lay on the bed and rested for a while. When the people who went to the river to take a bath came back one after another, and everyone went to sleep, Ian woke up when she heard Hong Shan snoring. She looked at the moon outside the window and estimated that it was already midnight. She climbed out of bed, walked past Xiao Mai, rolled up her clean clothes, and sneaked out the door. Outside the guard station in Liang Province, the wilderness was empty and the moon was bright and clear. Perhaps it was the border, but the moonlight was different from the one in the capital. Ian tiptoed to the river. The river around the guard station was at the foot of Mount Baiwei. Its name was very interesting. It was called the Five Deer River. It was said that one day, a fisherman who lived by the river came back from his boat in the middle of the night. He saw a fairy in plain clothes riding a 5-colored deer on the surface of the river. There were many large rocks by the river. Ian found a piece of shirtu and placed her clean clothes behind the shirtu to prevent them from getting wet. Then she took off her outer clothes and walked in. What she said to Hong Shan was right. After the incident of her drowning in the pond at the Su family home, she did not dare to go near the water. Unless she had no other choice, she did not want to go to the river. Because of this, even if she went into the water, she only dared to do it in shallow water. The river water was icy cold. It was very comfortable in the hot summer. The river breeze was also refreshing. Ian wiped her face. She felt that the tiredness from carrying the sandbag in the afternoon had been swept away. Every part of her body felt comfortable and warm. The bright moon here was as cold as frost and snow. It shone on the boundless wilderness and the wide river. It was magnificent and elegant. Mount Baiwei, 5 Deer River. Ian whispered. The names were very elegant, and they were indeed so. She looked at the silver-white moon and thought to herself that all that was missing was a beautiful fairy in plain clothes. If a fisherman were to pass by at this moment, perhaps she would be the rumored beautiful fairy. As she thought about it, she felt that it was funny and laughed out loud. "Who is it?" A voice rang out in the silence. It was both strange and familiar. Ian almost swallowed a mouthful of river water into her stomach. It can't be right. There was still someone here at this time? The person's footsteps paused for a moment. Then, he walked in the direction of Ian. Ian was stunned at first. Then, she quickly hid behind a large rock in front of her. Because she was in shallow water, she was not far from the river. Therefore, she could see the person clearly. It was a young man. He wore a dark blue robe embroidered with red cranes. The embroidery on the robe looked as if it was going to fly back with the wind. He was also very outstanding. He was handsome and charming. His eyebrows were as beautiful as a painting. The long sword at his waist looked like ice and snow under the moonlight. It made his expression even colder. This handsome young man was Xiao Ju, the commander-in-chief of the Right Army. Ian saw the person's face clearly. She wailed in her heart. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Chapter 37. Hey, don't come any closer. Ian was afraid that the person would walk in front of her, so she quickly stuck her head out from behind the shirt too. I'm naked. What are you doing? The person stopped in her tracks. Ian sighed in relief. Based on her understanding of Xiao Ju was extremely picky. Being naked in front of him was considered a breach of etiquette, so he didn't want to dirty his eyes. Who are you? What are you doing here? Xiao Ju stared at her and asked coldly. I'm a new recruit from the garrison. I'm here to take a bath, Ian replied. Xiao Ju heard this, and a trace of mockery flashed across her eyes. She clearly didn't believe her and asked, You're here to take a bath at this hour? There were too many people at night, so I fell asleep in my room. Ian looked at her. I'm not an adult here. I have my own room to take a bath, Indiana. If I did, who would want to take a bath in the middle of the night? I find it cold. Ian was referring to Xiao Ju when she said adult. She hoped that Xiao Ju could understand her sarcasm. Unfortunately, Xiao Ju didn't show any signs of guilt after hearing her words. She only looked at her calmly. Ian lowered her body into the river and asked, Who are you? I'll just pretend to be a new recruit who doesn't know anything about the world. It'll be more convincing that way. Xiao Ju didn't answer her and instead said, If you find it cold, then don't join the army. Was she refuting what she said just now? Ian looked at her clothes behind a huge rock. If Xiao Ju didn't leave, she would have to stay in the water. However, if she stayed in the water for too long, Xiao Ju would be suspicious. I joined the army for a reason, Ian said. Xiao Ju looked at her and raised her eyebrows. What's your purpose? Of course it's to build a career, get promoted and get rich, and become someone like General Feng Yin who achieves success at a young age. Then we can go home and build a house, marry a wife, marry the most beautiful and virtuous lady, give birth to the most adorable children, have many children and grandchildren, and live a prosperous life. What a good life. Ian showed a yearning expression. As soon as he said that, Xiao Ju's eyes turned cold. She scolded him coldly. How vulgar. Ian was overjoyed in his heart. She deliberately threw the name of General Feng Yun together with the wishes of ordinary men in the world to deliberately disgust him. Xiao Ju was such a proud person. He must feel humiliated. What's wrong with that? Ian looked serious. This is what you should do when you join the army. Be the happiest man. Xiao Ju glanced at her as if she couldn't bear to listen to her ravings. She left in a huff, as if she didn't want to talk to her anymore. Ian said from behind him, Hey, brother, can I trouble you to help me throw the clothes behind the rock over here? Just give me a hand. Xiao Ju naturally wouldn't help her get the clothes. Ian waited until he was far away and completely out of sight before she quickly washed up and ran to the shore to change her clothes. The moonlight was silent, as if it didn't see what happened. Ian carried the dirty clothes and walked back, but he thought about the scene when he saw Xiao Ju just now. At this time, Xiao Ju probably didn't come here to do anything. Perhaps she just came out for a walk. After all, the night was so beautiful. Speaking of which, He Yin and Xiao Ju hadn't seen each other for many years. The last time they met at the race course, he was afraid that Xiao Ju would find out, so he hurriedly lowered his head and didn't see clearly how different Xiao Ju was now. It was rare to see him clearly just now. It seemed that he was different from what he remembered. She knew that Xiao Ju was born handsome and beautiful in the past. Many young girls would rush forward just to look at him, but people actually became more and more beautiful. She didn't know what this person ate when he grew up, but now it seemed that he was even more charming than before. If Xiao Ju was said to have a bit of youthful charm, then that charm was completely gone now. He was like a fine jade, like a sword in a box, faintly shining. But his temperament was much colder than before. Ian walked slowly. That year, she had a big quarrel with the He family and then joined the army. She didn't know what happened in the Xianchang restaurant. At that time, Xiao Ju was still the Xiao family's young master, and everything was normal. After she joined the army, a few years later, she learned about the situation of the Xiao family's second young master from the people around her. Xiao Ju's father, Xiao Zhongwu, was a brave general of Dawei. He was best at winning with a few people. Just like Dawei, when they attacked Dawei, he was ambushed by the enemy at the Battle of Mingshui and died at the hands of the enemy leader. After General Xiao died, Xiao Ju took over the army and continued to lead the army to attack Dawei. Ian was 15 years old when she joined the army. When Xiao Ju joined the army, he was only 1 year older than her. She didn't know what exactly happened, but she knew that Xiao Ju was only 16 years old at that time. It was definitely not simple for him to take over the army from his father's hands. Not to mention the imperial family, the Xiao family's political enemies would not let go of this opportunity to hit them when they were down. If Xiao Ju was defeated, then the entire Xiao family would be defeated as well. As a military family, the Xiao family would definitely not be able to survive with just a civil official, eldest young master Xiao. Fortunately, the heavens were on his side. Not only did Xiao Ju win, he won beautifully. He defeated Dawei and brought the enemy's general's head back to the capital. At this point, he established the title of Young Killer Commander Jade-Faced. War was the fastest way to sharpen a person's heart. All the edges and sharpness had to be withdrawn in the face of life and death. Perhaps Xiao Ju still retained the arrogance and frivolity of the capital's nobles in the past. But now, he didn't have any of that. He was a more outstanding, more indifferent, more unfathomable, and more difficult to deal with Xiao Ju. Ian walked to the door. Everyone in the room was sleeping soundly, and no one noticed her. She placed her clothes at the foot of the bed and lay down. She closed her eyes, and her heart was calm. Fortunately, Xiao Ju was not the only one who had grown these years. She was the same as Xiao Ju. They weren't far apart. Chapter 38. The next day, they woke up at 5 in the morning and ran with weights as usual. The recruits were miserable. Because of yesterday's events, they still had to check on other things. The recruits were all dressed in red. When they woke up in the morning, they couldn't be disheveled. This included the messy beds they slept on at night. The next morning, they had to be neatly arranged. If there was a messy bed, they had to add an extra circle. Who could stand it if they added one round after another? Amidst the cries and screams, the recruits' appearance and military discipline were quickly fixed. It had only been half a month. Although the recruits didn't know how to set up formations with swords and arrows, they already looked decent. He sighed in his heart. Although Xiao Ju was a bit evil, her methods were quite impressive. Compared to military governor Xiao, Yin felt that his previous methods of training soldiers were simply too benevolent. As the saying goes, if you don't lead soldiers, then you won't keep money. It seemed that he still had to learn more from Xiao Ju. As the recruits ran in circles, the instructors took advantage of the gaps to talk. Head instructor Shan Han looked at Liang Ping and asked, "Why don't I see the weakest kid in your team?" Over the past few days, everyone knew that the weakest kid in the Liangzhou guards was one of Liang Jiaodo's recruits. He was thin and small, and his physical strength was extremely poor. Every morning, when he ran in the morning, he would fall behind the others. It was fine if it was 1 or 2 days, but after 3 days, almost everyone knew that there was such a person. It could be said that he was notoriously weak. "You said Yin?" Liang Ping pointed at the mountain path in the distance and said, "He's in front. Look, the one running with the middleman." Shenhan looked over and saw a youth running forward with a sandbag on his back. Although everyone was dressed in red, the youth was unusually thin and short, so it could be seen at a glance. Shenhan was a bit surprised. He didn't fall behind. How could that be? Liang Ping's face showed some complicated emotions. This kid is very strong-willed. Speaking of which, Liang Ping was not optimistic about Hien at first. To be honest, he had been an instructor for many years and had seen many new recruits. He could tell whether or not they could become a fierce soldier just by looking at them. Hien's physical aptitude was really too poor. Perhaps he had been pampered since he was young, so it was obvious that he did not have much strength. On the first day of his morning run, Liang Ping made a decision in his heart. I can only be a team leader. He didn't expect this kid to have such a strong personality despite his poor health. Even though he was dragging the tail every day, he still ran with the team. Liang Ping also noticed that from the first day until now, he had never tried to slack off. He had been running seriously. If a rich young master from a declining family were to be a small soldier, it would already be impressive to have such willpower and perseverance. What's more, Hien was not doing useless work. She seemed to have mastered some kind of trick or gradually began to adapt to this kind of weight-bearing long-distance running. In the beginning, she was lagging behind by a lot of laps. Gradually, she fell behind less and less. Now, she could barely keep up with the team. Liang Ping even had an illusion that if this continued and ran for a few more days, he might even be the one running in the front. As he was thinking, he heard Shun Han's voice from beside him. What's the use of being strong-willed? Aptitude is aptitude. Even if he can barely keep up with the running, the skill training in the future will still be too difficult for him. I don't know if he can pass the skill training. Before the skill training, the last morning run was to evaluate the physical fitness and potential of each new recruit. If there were too many people who fell behind, it would be impossible for them to even pass the skill training. Manpower was limited, so it was impossible to allocate so many troops to people who were not worthy. War was cruel. Before the cruel war, they could only choose those who could bear the cruelty. I think he can, Liang Ping said. Shenhan looked at him, and the other instructors around him also looked at him. Someone said, Liang Jiaodo, are you sure? Don't make a mistake. You have to know that after so many years, this kind of weak person can't even survive on the battlefield. Even so, Liang Ping smiled and said, you also know that the spirit has been tempered hundreds of times. It is sharp and strong. Who can be sure about this kind of thing? He looked at Hien. The young man's forehead was full of sweat. In the hot summer, his companions who were running with him gritted their teeth. Most of them looked impatient and annoyed. He was the only one who smiled and did not seem to have any complaints. This kind of willpower was really hard to come by. Hien did not know that he had become the topic of discussion among the instructors. She finished her last lap and put away the sandbag. Hong Shan punched her on the shoulder. Hey, good boy, you're really something. Hong Shan rubbed his chin and looked at him. Now you can even keep up with us. Are you happy now that you don't have to be the leader anymore? Hien laughed heartily. That's great. Seeing that she looked much better than a few days ago, Hong Shan was happy for her. At this time, Xiaomai waved at them from afar. Hey, go, Brother Shan, hurry up. There are meat buns today. After being here for so long, there was finally meat for them. Hien heard that and immediately salivated. Hong Shan also licked his lips and said, we finally have a good meal. Let's go, let's go. There was porridge in the iron pot, and everyone got a bowl. In the big wooden bucket beside them were steaming meat buns. They could smell the aroma from afar. The soldier in charge of distributing the meat buns stood in front of the wooden bucket. Everyone could get one. Hien also got one. She held the bowl of porridge. There were no seats around, so she wanted to find a shady place to sit down and eat the porridge. From afar, she saw Xiao Mai waving at her from under a tree. It seemed that she had found a good spot to enjoy the cool air. Yin was about to leave. She had only walked halfway when suddenly someone passed by her and bumped into her shoulder heavily. She staggered and spilled the half bowl of porridge in her hand. She did not hold the meat bun tightly, and it rolled down. Ian was about to reach out to catch it when a hand reached out and snatched the meat bun away. She stood still. In front of her stood a tall man with a mustache. There was an old scar from his left forehead to his cheek. At first glance, he looked strong and powerful. He took the meat bun as if it was a matter of course. He did not even look at Yin and continued to walk forward. A leg was placed in front of the man. The man paused and looked at the person in front of him. The young man retracted his leg. There was still a polite smile on his face, as if he did not understand what had just happened. She said, "Brother, you seem to have taken the wrong thing. The meat bun in your hand is mine." The scarred man looked at him strangely. After a moment, he suddenly laughed as if he had heard a funny joke. He opened his mouth and said in a hoarse voice, "Do you know what you were saying?" I said. The young man said calmly, "The meat bun in your hand is mine." Chapter 39. I said, "The bun in your hand is mine," she said. Before she finished speaking, the man laughed sinisterly and said, "Kid, don't look for trouble. I just want to take back what's mine." The other party looked at her. The young man was very frail. Even the red uniform of the army seemed too wide and long on him. He was also shorter than the average boy. Standing here, he looked like a child who had not grown up yet. A child yelling at him was like an ignorant puppy barking at a wolf. There was nothing but ridiculous about it. "Yours?" The scar-faced man grabbed the bun with disdain. Before Ian could react, he threw it into his mouth. The bun was not big to begin with, so he swallowed it in 2 or 3 bites. He was like a beast that could not wait to eat its prey. After eating, he looked at Ian provocatively and said with a strange smile, "Yours? Who can testify? What can you do to me?" The bun was already in his stomach. Ian could not cut open his stomach and take the bun out. After the man finished speaking, he looked at Yan's helpless expression happily. He took the bowl of porridge in his hand and walked forward unhurriedly. "What can I do to you?" Ian muttered to herself. After a moment, she smiled, turned around, and walked toward the scar-faced man. The scar-faced man was bending over to drink the porridge in his bowl. Ian kicked his knee. The scar-faced man's legs went weak, and he almost knelt down. He staggered a few steps and stood up. However, the porridge in his hand spilled on the ground. There was nothing left. Seeing this, the scar-faced man turned his head angrily. When he saw Ian, he gnashed his teeth and said, "You? Me?" Ian laughed and said, "I did it. Who can testify? What do you do to me?" The young man's eyes were full of slyness and a hint of provocation. It made the scar-faced man furious. The scar-faced man raised his fist and was about to step forward. "Hey, what do you want?" At this moment, a voice came from the side. It was Hong Shan and Shi Tu. When Xiao Mai saw Ian talking to Scarface for a long time, she guessed that something must have happened. She called her brother and Hong Shan over. Hong Shan and Shi Tu didn't look as easy to bully as Ian. Both of them looked strong and strong. Scarface didn't act rashly. He just snorted coldly and glared at Ian, saying, "Just you wait." Then he turned around and walked away. His tone was extremely vicious and full of threats. "What's wrong with you?" Hong Shan asked. "What happened?" "He snatched my meat bun, so I gave him my vegetable porridge. It's fair." Ian tried to put it simply. Hong Shan understood as soon as he heard this. He looked at Ian, sighed, and said, "Why are you angry with him? You should have endured it just now." "Why should I?" Ian asked. When she was in the army, she often encountered such things. In the army camp, it was common for the strong to bully the weak. When she first entered the army camp, it was common for her to be robbed of her food. If it weren't for her comrades who pitied her and gave her a share of their food, she might have starved to death. The military instructor in the army camp could prevent conflicts on the surface, but it was impossible to prevent such robberies in the dark. Moreover, she was too weak at that time. She was so weak that even the military instructor didn't care about her. let alone uphold justice for her. Later on, when she became strong, no one dared to rob her of her food. Later on, when she became the commander, she ordered her recruits to never rob others of their food or bully the weak. Once discovered, they would be punished by military order. Who would have thought that after her rebirth, she would encounter the same thing again? But this time, she was no longer the new recruit who trembled with fear and didn't dare to voice out her grievances. Even if Hong Shan and Shi Tu didn't appear just now, it would be more than enough for her to teach this scar-faced man a lesson. That man is Wang Ba, Hong Shan said. He used to be a bandit, but I don't know how he ended up joining the army. He's the fiercest one among Liang Jiaodo's subordinates. I heard from others that this kind of person kills people like flies. Today, you provoked him, and he holds a grudge in his heart. In the future, he'll definitely cause trouble for you. Sure too, and I can't be by your side every day. If he takes advantage of any loopholes, your life will be very difficult. I can't just accept that he robbed me of my food. Brother Sean, you have to believe that if he robbed me once, there will be a second time. If he comes to rob me every day, how can I live? Hien said, there's no such thing as unfair in the world. Nothing in the world is fair. The one who spoke was the usually taciturn Shi Tu. He looked at Hien and gently shook his head. It seemed that he didn't agree with her actions. You're too impulsive. If there's no fairness, then fight for it yourself. If you can't fight for fairness because you're too weak, then work hard to become stronger. Hien smiled. If the fist is the law here, then let him come to me. I promise. I'll let him know what fairness is. The young man spoke in a relaxed manner. His expression was calm, and there seemed to be a faint smile in his clear eyes. The wind blew, making his hair tie flutter. He didn't look like a soldier, but like a young master parading on the streets of the capital. She wanted to tease him by saying, newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers. But when she met his eyes, she couldn't say it. Was it really true that newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers? He was confident and didn't seem to be reckless. Shi Tu and Hong Shan didn't say anything else. The two accompanied Hien to the bottom of the tree. Xiaomai knew that Hien's meat bun was stolen. She felt that it was a pity, but in the end, she clumsily comforted him. It's okay, Ehigo. We'll be able to go up the mountain in a few days. I'll make a few slingshots to shoot birds or a few traps to catch rabbits. When the time comes, we'll eat wild game. It's much better than the meat in the meat bun. Hien couldn't help but laugh. After finishing the porridge in the bowl, she leaned against the tree trunk and rested her head with her hands behind her head. The sun lazily shone down, and there was a rare moment of coolness under the tree. She closed her eyes, and her mind was in a whirl. Although it was a pity to lose a meat bun, she didn't have to be so calculative about it. When the army was marching to war, sometimes the soldiers' pay couldn't keep up, and they were forced to defend the city. Not to mention meat bun, not to mention vegetable porridge. Sometimes they even had to eat tree bark and grass. The worst time was when she ate guanine clay. She ate until her stomach was bloated, and she risked her life to defend the city. Compared to that time, she was already very happy. But the wind blew past her cheeks. Hien curled up the corners of her mouth. If she guessed correctly, it would take at most 5 days. After 5 days, the skill training would begin. Some people would be assigned to be the vanguard. With her current physical strength, she probably had the qualifications to participate in the skill training. But how could she prove her worth in the shortest time possible and prove that she was qualified to join the vanguard? This was a problem. Chapter 40. Hien's guess was right. 3 days later, when they were running with sandbags on their backs, Liang Jiaodo shouted from the front, "From tomorrow onwards, you will run 5 laps around the barracks. The rest of the time, you will be doing weapon training. So today, you all better run well. If you don't run well, you won't get to eat lunch." Everyone was elated when they heard this. Compared to running with sandbags on a hot summer day, weapon training sounded much easier and more like something a new recruit should do. To be able to end this purgatory and enter a new phase perhaps meant that they were already gradually becoming decent soldiers of the Great Way. Hien understood the meaning behind Liang Jiaodo's words. Today was the last test. If they didn't run well and obviously couldn't keep up, they wouldn't be qualified to do weapon training anymore. Ian bent over to carry the sandbags. At this time, someone passed by her and suddenly bumped into her. She stood up straight and looked. It was the scarred-faced Wang Ba who had snatched her meat bun a few days ago. Wang Ba looked at him and revealed a sinister smile. "Kid, after today, you'll be a squad leader. Your good days will come to an end." Ian shrugged. "I don't understand. Your two brothers won't always follow you. A squad leader." He lowered his voice, and a trace of violence flashed in his eyes. "No one will care if I kill you. Then you can try." Ian threw the sandbags on his back and smiled at him. "By the way, I will not be a squad leader. Never." After he finished speaking, he didn't care about Wang Ba's expression and turned around to go up the long road. Xiao Mai followed him anxiously and asked, he didn't make things difficult for you just now, right?" "How could he?" Ian smiled and replied, "We just chatted for a while." "I see." Xiao Mai laughed again. "Go. You're amazing. You're not even panting when you're running with us, and you're running so fast." Xiao Mai and Shirtu grew up in the mountains. As hunters, they had to go out hunting every day. Once they went out, they would spend the whole day hunting. Therefore, they had good stamina and could run very fast. Hian's initial weakness was seen by everyone, but now she was becoming more energetic and relaxed day by day. It made people wonder if she had secretly taken some kind of elixir. "Is that so?" Hian nodded seriously. "I really do have potential." On the other side, the instructors who were observing the situation gathered together. Half a month of daily long-distance running was not only to train the physical strength of the recruits, but also to judge the aptitude of the recruits. They would record every day, and today would be the last time. After today, long-distance running would no longer be a means to judge one's aptitude. Instead, it would become an ordinary training. This was because being able to train with weapons meant that this person already had the qualifications to become a Dawei recruit. They would not die before the war because of their physical condition. There were strong and weak people in the military camp, and the contrast between the strong and the weak was even more obvious. Those with good aptitude would stand out from the start, while those with poor aptitude would be an eyesore. This was a very unfair thing. After all, no one could change the way they were born. However, there was an accident during this process. Old Liang. Someone patted Liang Jiaodo's shoulder. "Hian and your team is really a talent." Hian was that accident. Her aptitude was very poor, and she received a unanimous evaluation from the instructors from the start. Even when she was assigned as a squad leader, everyone was afraid that she would get sick from the fire. However, she was getting lighter and lighter day by day. Now, she was able to steadily keep up with the team and was even at the front of the team. This was a miracle. Ropes can cut wood, and dripping water can penetrate stone. Liang Jiaodo was very proud. I've said it before. Liang Ping, will not make a mistake. This kid's determination is hard to come by. He could do anything well. Don't boast. The person who poured cold water on him was called Du Mao. He was also one of the instructors. He said disapprovingly, "You know that aptitude is aptitude." What did he rely on to keep up with the team? It was hard work. This was the truth. Everyone looked at the youth who was running with the team. He was of the right age, looked optimistic, and was very likable. When he ran, he was very well behaved. He rarely spoke to the people around him, and he ran very seriously. In short, he looked like he was very serious about what he was doing. He worked very hard to be able to do this. Other people don't need to work hard. Maybe they can do it with just 1 point. Du Mao said, right now he's just running with sandbags. In the future, the weapons training and formation exercises will only get more complicated. He also needs to put in more effort than others. This way, he will never stand out. He can only be an ordinary soldier. I advise you to put more effort into the recruits with good aptitude in your team. Don't pay too much attention to that kid. Du Mao shook his head. It's meaningless. I can't win an argument with you. I'm too lazy to argue with you. Liang Ping was not very happy with his words. He took his spear and left. However, as he walked, he began to mutter in his heart. As instructors, they had led many soldiers. In the end, Those who could survive on the battlefield or make contributions were usually those who performed amazingly at the beginning and had outstanding qualities. That young man could only work hard, but was it really useful to work hard? He finished running for the day in one breath. He received his meal and finished it. In the afternoon, Liang Jiao suddenly came and picked a dozen soldiers to follow him. Hey, those people seem to be going to be cooks, Xiaomai said. But do cooks need so many people? He smiled and shook her head. It's just a title. Not all cooks. So do other things. In short, they don't have to go to the front line to fight. That's good. Hong Shan stretched. They don't have to fight with their lives. Isn't it good to live? But Ahigu is happy this time, Xiaomai said mischievously. They don't have to be cooks. He didn't want to be cooks. This was something everyone knew. She didn't refute. She just smiled and said, "Congratulations. Are you going to have a chance to perform soon?" Hong Shan glanced at her and said teasingly, "You can show off your skills in the upcoming weapon drill." Well, not really. He thought for a while before answering. She was good at swordsmanship, archery, horsemanship, and running with a spear were not difficult. After running for so long, climbing mountains and charging were not a problem. The only difficulty was probably the crossbow. The crossbow required a lot of hand strength. It was difficult to pull it without a strong body. With Lady He's current physique, it might be a little difficult. However, Xiao Ju probably wouldn't use a crossbow when training soldiers, right? She thought. She thought wrong. Chapter 41. The next day, just as Liang Jiao had said, they ran half of the laps and finished early. It wasn't even time for lunch yet. Then, all the recruits were brought to the training field. The training field next to the Liangzhou guard station was huge. It was probably because there was a large open field at the foot of the mountain that could accommodate everyone. Ian looked around and thought that this was indeed a good place to train. It was noon and the sun was high up in the sky. There wasn't even a trace of wind. The flags on the high platform were stuck to the flagpoles, making the recruits look listless from the sun. From today onwards, you will begin weapon training. Chief Instructor Shun slammed his long spear on the ground. Everyone was shocked and looked at him attentively. Do you see that open field? Shun Han pointed his long spear to the north. Next to the open field near the weapon rack, there were dozens of crossbows in rows, staring at them aggressively. 100 steps in front of the crossbows, there were arrow targets neatly arranged. From today onwards, all of you will start learning how to use the bow. Chief Instructor Shun ordered. The following days were once again packed with students. For a moment, everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wow, archery is my favorite. Xiaomai was probably the happiest. Brother, it's our turn to show off. Ian asked Shirtu. The bows you use for hunting aren't this heavy, right? Shirtu looked at the crossbow for a while and shook his head. No, it's lighter than this. It's also not made from cow horns. I made it from bamboo. It's pretty much the same, Xiaomai said happily. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked Ian, Ehigu, can we borrow this bow to hunt rabbits in the mountains? Ian, train hard, don't dream about it. As usual, the recruits were divided into teams. Each team was led by the head instructor to practice crossbow. The head instructor demonstrated first. He pulled the bow and released an arrow. The arrow flew into the middle of the target with a whoosh sound. It was very firm. The recruits burst into cheers, and the head instructor had a pleased expression on his face. He could not help but praise him in his heart. Liang Ping was not a fake. He was really capable. Such a person would be an expert on the battlefield. The soldiers in the barracks were all very excited and eager to give it a try. One after another, they came up to test the bows. Some people were born with great strength and could draw their bows to the fullest. Although they couldn't shoot accurately, they could shoot far. Some of them had already touched a bow and arrow before, so they were more familiar with the posture. Most of the recruits had strength but no accuracy. Their arrows were crooked, and before the arrows could reach the target, they would break in midair and fall to the ground. After all, he had drawn his bow and shot an arrow. Hongshan also went up to try. He was born strong and could draw the bow well, but his accuracy was not good. He fell down when he reached the edge of the target. He didn't think much of it and even felt very satisfied. He nodded and said, "Not bad, not bad." Sure Tu and Xiao Mai followed closely behind. Sure Tu's hand strength was steadier and stronger. The arrow flew out of his hand with a whoosh sound and did not hit the target. Although it did not hit the target, it was still in the middle. Liang Jiao looked at him in surprise and asked, "What's your name? Have you touched a bow before?" "My name is Zhong Sure Tu. I used to be a hunter," Sure Tu said in a deep voice. "No wonder." Liang Ping nodded with satisfaction. He was naturally happy that there was a good seedling in the team. Xiao Mai went up to him and said, "My name is Zhong Xiao Mai. I'm his younger brother. I used to be a hunter too." "Oh." Liang Jiao was a little expectant. He said, "Why don't you try?" Xiao Mai followed Sure Tu's example and pulled the bow. However, this time, he did not have his big brother's impressive ability. The arrow he shot just happened to miss the target. Liang Ping was speechless. Xiao Mai rubbed his nose and stepped back resentfully. Yin was a little amused. Just as she was thinking about whether she should give it a try, someone walked out faster than her. "Whoa," Hong Shan whispered beside Yin. "It's him." It was Wang Ba. They didn't notice that Wang Ba was actually a soldier under Liang Jiao. He walked forward, rolled up his sleeves to his elbows, spat twice on his palms, and picked up the bow. Yin looked at him. His arms were very tight, and she could vaguely see his strong, honey-colored skin. He was a very strong person. Wang Ba was not in a hurry to shoot the arrow like the other recruits. He took a deep breath and aimed at the center of the target. This way, Yin calculated in his heart. It was probably not his first time using a bow. Like Sure Tu, he was a good archer who often touched the bow. Finally, the top bowstring let out a clanging sound, and the arrow went straight to the center of the target. Everyone only saw a white light flash in front of their eyes, and then the grass target in front of them was hit by the force of the arrow and fell to the ground with a bang. The arrow did not hit the center of the target. Only a little bit of the arrow feather was exposed. Not only did the arrow penetrate the grass target, but it also brought the target down. Ian could not help but sigh in his heart. This was a very amazing arrow. Wang Ba was strong and steady. His aim was good, and he could keep his composure. It was very rare. Liang Jiao looked at Wang Ba with a strange gaze. In this batch of recruits, there was Sure Tu Zhong and Wang Ba. They were really good at crossbows. Wang Ba put away his bow. He did not immediately walk away. Instead, he walked in front of Yin in 2 steps. The scar-faced man crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Yin with a gloating expression. He said, "It's your turn." It would have been better if he did not say that. Once he said that, many people around him looked at Yin. Facing Wang Ba's provocative gaze, Yin walked forward. The bow was a high-quality horn bow. It was very smooth to the touch. It had probably been used countless times in the past. There were traces of it. Yin touched it bit by bit. His time in the army suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. The last time she used a crossbow was when she was still in the General Fei home. Many years had passed in a flash. Liang Ping looked at Yin with a strange expression. He knew that a crossbow was different from other weapons. It required a lot of hand strength. Judging from Yin's physique and previous performance, he would not be able to perform well. But this was a very hard-working recruit. People always looked forward to the unknown. Liang Ping was also very conflicted. "Why are you touching it? Don't waste other people's time." Wang Ba sneered. "Why don't you show us your superb archery skills?" Yin picked up the bow and put his fingers on the arrow. After a moment, he put down the bow. "What does a he gu mean?" Xiao Mai asked, puzzled. Why did he put down the bow when he had not started to draw it? Was there something wrong? "Why aren't you moving?" Wang Ba was dissatisfied. "Move it." "No need." Yin looked calm. "I can't draw this bow." Chapter 42. This bow, I can't draw it. The surrounding recruits looked at Yin in a daze. Liang Jiao also raised his head in disbelief, almost thinking that he had misheard. What did he mean by this bow? "I can't draw it." And he said it so confidently, as if it was a matter of course. He had led so many soldiers, but this was the worst one he had ever led. He was so angry. What nonsense are you talking about? Wang Ba also didn't expect He Yin to be so honest. He thought that He Yin naturally had some special skills when he acted so arrogantly that day. This result was simply unacceptable. Right now, I don't have enough strength in my hand to draw this bow. Why waste time? Give the crossbow to the brothers who need to practice. In a few days, when I have enough strength in my hands, I will be able to draw the bow. Yin, the city guard institution is not a place for you to play. Liang Jiaodo's face also darkened. He thought that this young man was hard-working, willing to endure hardships, and determined to succeed. He didn't expect him to say his own incompetence so matter-of-factly. I don't think of it as a place for me to play. The young man's eyes were clear. After some thought, he made a concession. Then in one more day, I will be able to draw this bow tomorrow. How about it? Liang Jiaodo was so angry that his nose was crooked. He actually bargained for him. Did he think the city guard institution was a market? Previously, he was very satisfied with He Yan's running while carrying weights. He was improving day by day, but the crossbow was not a simple matter. The strength in the hands was not something that could be trained overnight. Where did he get the confidence that he could draw the bow tomorrow? Liang Jiaodo began to regret not listening to Du Mao. He shouldn't have paid so much attention to He Yan. He shouldn't have made him a squad leader so that he wouldn't be angering himself. At his age, what would he do if something happened to him? He really didn't want to see He Yan's innocent face. Liang Jiaodo waved his hand at He Yan. Stop pulling. Go over there. Carry the sandbag and run. 5 laps. He Yan replied slowly. Oh. He obediently walked to the side, picked up the sandbag, and went up the long road. He was obedient, but the feeling of punching cotton made Liang Jiaodo even more frustrated. He turned his head away and decided not to look at the young man who made him angry. He Yan ran slowly, and a person appeared beside him. It was Wang Ba. Brat, how dare you come to the barracks when you're so weak? Wang Ba laughed wildly. How dare you boast when you can't even draw a bow? Brother, He Yan said as he ran, you've been watching me all day. Are you really afraid of me? Afraid of you? Wang Ba was stunned. If you're not afraid of me, you don't have to follow me around all day, afraid that I'll steal your limelight. Who's afraid of you? Wang Ba wanted to curse out loud. What kind of person was this? He was invulnerable. He had his own way of saying it. You should know that private fights are prohibited in the army. Ian made a gesture. If you're caught, you'll be punished with a rod. There are guards everywhere in the mountains. Even if you want to find trouble with me, now is not a good time. That was true. Wang Ba stared at him and said with a fake smile, If I want to find trouble with you, why do I have to do it in private? You can't even draw a bow. On the martial arts field, I can make you kneel down and beg for mercy. Oh, Hien answered casually. Okay, then I'll see you on the martial arts field. Be there or be square. After that, she seemed to be in a hurry. Carrying the sandbag, she quickened her pace and ran away, leaving Wang Ba far behind. Wang Ba looked at her brisk figure and felt that it was extremely irritating. He cursed and turned to walk away. Today's crossbow training finally came to an end after the sun had set in the west. The recruits rushed over to find food and were eager to fill their stomachs. The instructors gathered together and ate dinner while talking about the anecdotes in their respective teams. If there were recruits with good aptitudes, they would show off to them. Liang Ping originally wanted to praise Wang Ba and Shi too, but when he thought of Yin, he felt stifled. He was afraid that someone would mention him, so he just lowered his head and ate silently. He didn't expect that the more he feared, the more it would happen. Du Mao asked with concern, Old Liang, how's he Yin in your team today? Liang Ping didn't know what to say. The instructor next to him laughed and said, Him, haha, today, he gave up before he could even draw the bow. He said, I can't draw this bow. He imitated Yan's calm tone, but with his expression, it seemed to be mocking. At that time, old Liang was so angry that his face turned green. He didn't even draw the bow. Du Mao was also very surprised. That's too ridiculous. That kid doesn't look like someone who can stay in a military camp. You don't know, but he said that he would be able to draw the bow tomorrow if he gave him one day. I was wondering where old Liang found such treasure. I really doubt him. The instructor who spoke pointed to his head. There's a problem here. As they were talking, someone came in. The instructors turned around and saw Xiao Ju and Cheng Lisu walking in. Everyone immediately put down their bowls and chopsticks, stood up, and saluted. Commander-in-Chief, young Master Cheng. I heard you guys talking from afar. What are you guys laughing about? Cheng Lisu asked with a smile. This young man was used to looking happy. He had been eating and drinking in the Liang province guards these past few days, enjoying himself. Although they didn't know why this young master who lived in luxury in the capital didn't stay at home and enjoy life, but came to the Liang province guards, since he was brought here by Xiao Ju, they had to give him some face and didn't dare to slight him. It was the same instructor who had mocked Liang Ping at the beginning who spoke first. We were talking about the training of the new recruits today. Old Liang has a new recruit who can't even draw the bow, and he said that he would be able to draw it tomorrow. Young Master Cheng, don't you think that's funny? Huh, he can't even draw the bow. Doesn't that mean he's worse than me? Cheng Lisu was shocked. He was already the weakest of the young masters in both civil and military matters, but he could still draw the bow. He didn't expect to meet someone who was weaker than him here. He immediately became interested. He turned to look at Xiao Ju. Uncle, did you hear that? At least in the Liang province guards, I'm not the worst. Xiao Ju glanced at him, as if he didn't want to pay attention to him. Cheng Lisu was given the cold shoulder, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he turned to the instructors in high spirits and asked, "What's that warrior's name? We have such similar interests. I must meet him properly and become sworn brothers." Liang Ping. Hey, old Liang, what's that new recruit's name again? The instructor who spoke tried hard to recall. He what? What did he do wrong? Why did the heavens treat him like this? He had embarrassed himself in front of the commander-in-chief. Liang Ping wanted to cry, but under everyone's gaze, he could only brace himself and say, "Yin." When a youth with the cold expression heard this, he suddenly raised his eyes. "Yin." Chapter 43. Yin was sitting with Shirtu and Xiaomai. Hong Shan's worried face was about to drip water. He looked at Yin and said, you can't even draw a bow now. What will you do in the future? Why don't we go talk to Liang Jiaodo and tell him that you'll be a team leader? Although it doesn't sound very glorious, you're lucky. Isn't that right, Xiaomai? He nudged Xiaomai with his elbow, hinting for Xiaomai to say something. Xiaomai stammered in agreement. That's right. Go. Even if you become a team leader, we'll still come to see you often. Yin smiled and didn't say anything. Hongshan was really worried when he saw this. After interacting with Yin these days, he and this young man's temperament was unusually congenial. Compared to his brother, who was spoiled and sometimes gave him a headache, Yin was much more sensible. His ideal brother should be like this. Unknowingly, he began to treat Yin as his own younger brother. However, Yin couldn't even draw a bow. When he went to the battlefield in the future, he would die. How could he watch his brother jump into the fire pit? Brother Shan, don't worry about me. I'll be able to draw a bow tomorrow. She comforted him. Do you think you're a spiritual speaker? You can't just say it and it'll come true. Hong Shan was flustered and exasperated. Why can't this child understand? Shirtu, who had been silent all this time, was silent for a while. He asked, do you have any tricks? No. Yin thought for a while. I've always been a person with poor aptitude. There are many things that I can't do. I have no choice but to try a few more times. Later, I found out that as long as I try a few more times, I can succeed. After saying this, Yin sighed. It was rumored that General Feng Yun was a natural star general, a genius bestowed by the heavens. But how could she be so miraculous? So much so that because she was a woman, her innate physical strength was weaker than a man's. In other words, her aptitude was not good. She had spent many years turning Yin into a brave and invincible general on the battlefield. But after her rebirth, she was given such a weak body. Could this be the saying, when the heavens are about to bestow a great responsibility upon us, We must first exhaust our muscles and bones and starve our bodies and skin. She didn't expect to be outstanding. She just wanted to be a strong man like Wang Ba when she was reincarnated. It would be much easier to do things than it is now. He thought about it all the way until he went to bed at night. The recruits were tired during the day, so naturally they slept soundly at night. Their snores rose and fell. He estimated the time. In the dead of the night, he climbed out of his bed. Xiao Mai turned over and mumbled something. He paused for a while to make sure that Xiao Mai did not wake up. Then, he quietly left the room. After leaving the room, he went straight to the martial arts practice field. The martial arts practice field was empty at night. In the summer, there was a lot of night wind in the mountains. The night wind made the flags flutter. Under the moonlight, the green waves in the forest rose and fell, creating a stretch of moonlight. Most of the border areas were bitterly cold. The Liang province guards were already considered very good. She had never seen this kind of scenery when she was stationed at the border. It was mostly a desolate landscape. For a moment, her footsteps slowed down, as if she couldn't bear to break the tranquility of the night. Some of the crossbows during the day had already been put away. Only one or two that were not easy to move were left in place. The grass targets were swaying left and right. They hadn't been picked up in time. After the morning run tomorrow, there would be recruits who would clean this place up. He walked to the row of grass targets. After searching for a long time, she felt around in the darkness and found an arrow that had fallen to the side. She took the arrow and walked back to the crossbow. She had to spend a lot more time doing things that others could do easily. However, she had no choice but to do it. If she didn't do it, she would have to do it for the rest of her life. She tried to draw the bow. The bow was very heavy. She could only draw it a little. If she looked at it with her eyes, it really wasn't obvious. He put down the bow and rubbed her wrist. After a while, she tried to draw the bow again. Just like before, she only drew a little. She tried this 5 or 6 times and finally got better. This time, she drew the bow better than before. At least she could see that it was drawn. He breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, she didn't have much confidence in what she said to Liang Jiaodo during the day. It was because Lady He hadn't even mentioned a heavy object in the past 10 years. When she first came to the He family, she only cut a piece of firewood and her hand was cut. Drawing the bow was really a bit difficult for Lady He. However, the situation at the time forced her to say that. If she couldn't draw the bow tomorrow, then it would be a different matter. At worst, she could just act shamelessly in front of the instructor and try a few more times. When it comes to matters in the world, those who put in the effort will always have better results than those who didn't. She didn't have any talent. The only thing she had was this hard work. However, in this world, there was something that couldn't be obtained even if one worked hard for a lifetime. That was the human heart. She sacrificed herself for the He family and gave all her love for Su Zhiying. She had already worked so hard, but it was still fruitless. Hian's eyes drooped. She put her fingers on the bow and shot an arrow. This arrow seemed to want to vent all her pain. It made a whistling sound in the dark night as it flew towards the grass target in the dark. The arrow did not land on the target. It fell to the ground halfway. Her strength was still too weak. She could barely pull the bow and shoot the arrow, but that was all she could do. She couldn't vent her pain incisively and vividly every time. Ian smiled and got up to pick up the arrow. She had just walked to the side of the arrow when she suddenly sensed something. She raised her head. About 10 steps away from her, there was a pair of brocade boots. The boots were embroidered with a dark golden pattern. It flashed a magnificent color in the dark night. There was someone here. She was so focused on archery that she didn't notice it. Ian straightened up and walked forward a few steps. Thus, the person standing in the dark night was completely revealed. It was actually Xiao Ju. The martial arts practice field was so big that it was only illuminated by the moonlight. He stood behind the grass target and wore a black robe. He was hidden in the dark night and was used as a target by Hian. The handsome young man looked at her indifferently. He didn't have any intention of explaining. Hian felt a bit embarrassed for no reason. She composed herself and cleared her throat. She decided to gain the initiative by striking first. What are you doing here? Watching you practice archery. It was clearly an indifferent tone, but Ian could clearly hear a trace of indistinct mockery. What's wrong with me practicing archery? What do you think after you've seen it? Ian asked. The handsome young man lowered his eyebrows. His long eyelashes were like butterfly wings under the moonlight. They gently fluttered. However, his tone was cold and had a bit of ridicule. I'm very surprised that there is someone who works so hard and can't even withstand a single blow. Ian was stunned. For a moment, time and space overlapped. The sound of the wind slowly faded away. The night sky was covered with stars. The figure of the young man in front of her gradually blurred and turned into the back of a young man, whose voice fell into her ears. It had a familiar mocking tone. I didn't expect that there would be someone who works so hard. What a weakling. Chapter 44. Ian had always thought that she was pretty good before she went to the Xianchang dojo. After entering the Xianchang dojo, Ian suspected that she had taken another step forward on her path every day. Those who entered the Xianchang dojo were all children of noble families. Not only were they rich and powerful, but their families were also rich. Nouveau riches, or families who relied on nobility to survive, could not compare to them. He Yuanliang would not have been able to get He Yin in through the back door if he did not maintain a personal relationship with the teacher. On one hand, He Yin was very happy that she could enter the Xianchang dojo. On the other hand, she was filled with pain every day she spent in the Xianchang dojo. The reason was none other than the fact that compared to the children here, her results were a little too horrible to look at. The He family taught her to behave like a man outside, but she did not learn much about the inner workings. When she first arrived at the Xianchang dojo, she did not know anything and often made a fool of herself. Even the teacher could do nothing about it. If it was the liberal arts, she could read it a few more times, memorize it a few more times, and listen attentively during lectures. She could barely get into the middle class. However, when it came to the martial sciences, she failed miserably. Ian had snuck to the back of the mountain to help the monks carry water to practice their hand strength since she was young. She thought that she could do it now. However, the first time she did the martial sciences assessment in the Xianchang dojo, she became the wonder of the Xianchang dojo. She did not pass any of the bow, saber, and stone tests. She fell off her horse when she galloped and missed when she shot arrows. Even the teacher shook his head and sighed. The youths around her pointed at her and laughed. Someone said, "He Rufei, are you a girl? Why don't you know anything? Do you usually learn embroidery at home?" Ian stood up from the ground in a panic and patted the dust off her body. She thought to herself, "No, if this goes on, my identity will be discovered. Before my identity is discovered, madam, he will take me back and I will have to stay at home again." It was better to study hard and practice hard. Only then could she safely stay in the Xianchang dojo. Therefore, Ian began the path of studying hard and practicing hard. No one chiseled the wall to steal the light. No one danced when they heard the rooster, and there were also some who hung the beam and stabbed the buttocks. Ian often scolded in his heart as he practiced. He practiced riding, archery, and saber. No matter how hard she tried, she could only struggle at the edge of the tail. Thus, those geniuses who didn't need to work hard and could easily take the lead were particularly eye-catching. Xiao Zhu was one of them, and he hated her the most. This young man was born like Pan Lang, and his family background was so good that he was doted on. That was not all. He entered school on time every day and was often late. Sometimes he left early. Usually, he did not put in much effort, but he was always the first in all the arts and martial arts subjects. Even thunder could not shake him. Ian was very confused. God had given him beauty and a noble status. Why did he have to give him wisdom? Can't he share some with me? God did not answer Ian. She could only tearfully make up for her lack of talent. Gradually, Ian's saber, horse, and bow began to show results. Although he could not compare to those young men who grew up with their fathers and brothers at home, he did not always get last place. Sometimes, he could even fight for third place from the bottom. Ian felt satisfied. Hard work paid off. At the end of the Xianchang dojo, the martial arts subjects would divide the weapons. Heian chose the sword among the sabers and swords. It was not for anything else, but because he felt that a sword was lighter than a saber, and it would not be so strenuous to wield. However, her swordsmanship was also a mess. The He family did not invite a martial arts teacher to teach her in the residence. Heian did not have any foundation. Even the horse stance was crooked. The swordsmanship teacher of the Xianchang dojo did not have much hope for her. He only wanted her to look like this. Whether she could defend against the enemy was another matter. Which young master did not bring a few attendants with him when he went out? If there was really danger, the attendants could just go. Heian felt that this was not right. Since she had chosen, she should practice the sword well. The students could only go home 2 days a month. The rest of the time, they lived in the Xianchang dojo. She sneaked out at night in the dark and ran to the courtyard of the dojo to practice her swordsmanship. The dojo was elegantly built. When the moonlight was good, the wind rustled the bamboo forest. A stretch of green meandered. There was the moon, the bamboo cypress, and the red carp in the pond swayed their tails. It was like heaven on earth, a fairyland in a painting. The master practiced her swordsmanship here, waiting for the world to change. She would appear when there was chaos. Heian practiced quite happily if her shoddy swordsmanship was ignored. She accidentally cut off a corner of her clothes, accidentally hit her head by the scabbard, accidentally tripped, accidentally. She heard a soft laugh. In the night, this soft laugh came inexplicably. Heian got up nervously. Could it be that she saw a ghost? She saw a person sitting on the stone bench in the courtyard. She did not know when, but someone was sitting there. She was wearing a white robe and embroidered shoes. Her eyes were bright and beautiful. It was the proud child who was favored by the heavens, Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju lowered her head to look at her. She put her hands behind her back and wiped the stains on her clothes. She said with a calm face, "What are you doing here?" "Watching you practice your swordsmanship." The youth lazily replied, What is there to see?" She gathered her courage to answer. She never liked to talk to the youths in the Xianchang dojo. They did not like her and always bullied her. Xiaoju looked at her for a while and suddenly stood up. She was caught off guard, and the youth was already in front of her. She was a girl and was not as tall as a boy. She could only reach the youth's chest. She raised her head and could see the other party's clear jawline and beautiful eyes that were as gentle and cold as autumn water. "I was just surprised." The youth lightly hooked his lips. He was born handsome and beautiful. When he smiled, the cool night in the courtyard paled in comparison. It was more moving than the moonlight. However, the words he spat out were filled with mockery. "There is actually someone who works so hard and is still a weakling." She pushed Xiao Ju away, picked up her sword, and ran away. She was angry. The heavens were fair. They gave this youth beauty and talent, but they did not give him a good heart. This person was too annoying. After that, Heian still sneaked into the courtyard every night to practice her swordsmanship. Her thinking was simple. Hard work could make up for one's lack of talent. Hard work was always better than not working hard. However, what made her angry was that from that day onwards, Xiao Ju also followed her out every night. When she practiced her swordsmanship, he would sit on the stone bench and read and drink tea by the candlelight. She fell until her nose was bruised and her face was swollen. Several pieces of her clothes were torn. He was like the moon and the breeze. His posture was elegant as he calmly watched her make a fool of herself. She still worked hard to maintain her sprint from the last to the third from the last. He did it effortlessly and was the best at everything. The hard work was still hard. The easy work was still easy. Spring passed and autumn came. Winter came and summer came. The youth had grown into a young man. The girl had changed her face. The white clouds changed. The sea turned into mulberry fields. The only thing that did not change was the night in the Xianchang dojo and the crescent moon in the backyard. Chapter 45. The night sky was like ink in a painting, and the stars were like embellishments. The sound of the wind was poetic. A handsome man with beautiful eyebrows and a young boy who was looking at him seriously. It was a beautiful scene. Hien was silent. Xiao Ju opened his mouth and said faintly, "You're Hien?" Hien was shocked and blurted out, "I'm already so famous?" In the military camp, she did not think that she was outstanding enough to attract the attention of the commander-in-chief. How did Xiao Ju know about her now? Xiao Ju sneered, "You're running while carrying weights, and you can't fire your crossbow." He looked down at the top of Hien's head and said casually, "And you're so short. I can't think of anyone else in the military camp." Hien was speechless. "And you're so short?" For a moment, she seemed to have returned to the time when she first met Xiao Ju in the Xianchang gymnasium. Xiao Ju's evaluation of her was that she was stupid and short. She did not expect that Xiao Ju would still give her such an evaluation after she changed her body. He was still the same as before. He was so arrogant and unreasonable. Looking at him like this, he did not have the coldness of a young man. He was just like the young boy in her impression who was so outstanding that he was almost mean. He naturally felt wronged. To be honest, with her height, she really couldn't be called short among women. It was just that in the military camp where there were burly men everywhere, she looked as weak as a chicken. But she cannot be blamed. When she was Yin, she was a little taller than she was now. Moreover, He Rufei replaced her, so other people would not think that General Fei Hong was short. But now, she could not stuff cushions in her shoes to make herself look taller. As she was thinking, Xiao Ju suddenly took a step closer to her. The distance between them was a little too close. Hien was stunned. The shape of his eyes was extremely beautiful, clear, and gentle. When he lowered his eyes to look at her, it gave her the illusion that she was looking at a lover. His skin was also very white, even more sparkling and translucent than Lady He's skin, which made his brows look even more picturesque. His fine black hair was tied up and draped over his shoulders, making him look cool. There was a faint scent of moon chilin, which made people want to touch him. Hien thought that if the fairy who came riding on the deer saw this person, she would be so embarrassed that she would turn around and leave. No wonder so many women in the capital dreamed of this noble man. They would never get tired of looking at his face for the rest of their lives. "What are you thinking about?" he asked indifferently. "I'm thinking about what I can eat to be as good-looking as you," Hien replied. His movements stiffened, and he no longer pressed closer. As if he had verified something, he shifted his gaze and said, "Boring." He actually did not scold her. Hien was surprised. She thought that Xiao Ju was going to use the military order to scold her. But on second thought, she understood. Xiao Ju had not revealed his identity yet. According to common sense, she should not know who he was. Therefore, she could only pretend that he was a stranger who accidentally bumped into her practicing ginger. "What's so boring about this?" Hien blew the hair on his forehead and said carelessly, "Everyone loves beauty." Xiao Ju paused and stared at him. That stare was as if he was looking at a dead man. Hien stared back at her without fear. He had never seen someone as reckless as her. Xiao Ju was also startled for a moment. Then she sneered and turned around to leave, leaving Hien alone in the martial arts arena. Hien realized something. Xiao Ju's temperament was colder than before, but it was also better than before. In the past, when she angered him, he could mock her without repeating himself. But now, he only glanced at her and did not want to talk to her. In the past, she did not dare to provoke Xiao Ju. But now, this noble second son of a Xiao family did not bother to argue with others like he did when he was young. Did this mean that she could easily anger Xiao Ju to death and take revenge on him for hurting her in the past? The heavens were still fair. She thought, what goes around comes around. Today it's my turn. Very good. After Xiao Ju left, Hien pulled the crossbow for another hour. When his hands were sore, he went back to sleep. The next morning, he woke up slightly later. Xiao Mai pushed him and said, "Ehigo, wake up." Hien opened his eyes. The bodies of different people were indeed different. When she was young, no matter how late she secretly practiced her swordsmanship, she could still listen to her teacher's lectures the next day. But now, she only stayed up for one night. It was not very late, but she felt uncomfortable all over. Could it be that she really had a hard life in her previous life? He reflected on himself. Although he reflected on himself, he still had to do what he needed to do. Today, they carried sandbags and ran. After running, everyone consciously followed the recruits to the back of the training field to prepare for yesterday's archery. The crossbows had already been put up. During the day, it was not as cool as it was at night. The sunlight was so bright that it was dazzling. Liang Jiaodo stood beside the crossbows. The recruits went to test the bows one by one. Compared to yesterday, the recruits weren't as excited. Their technique was also much more stable. Fewer of them shot at random places. At the very least, they were shooting at the target without a mistake. Hongshan also went to shoot. His shooting was better than yesterday. Shirtu still won Liang Jiaodo's praise. Although Xiao Mai's hand strength was small, it was not too bad. Moreover, because of her brother Shirtu's guidance, her improvement was obvious. Ian saw Wang Ba again. Wang Ba walked forward unhurriedly. Before he pulled the bow, he deliberately gave He Yin a contemptuous look. He Yin responded with a smile. This smile seemed to have angered him. His face immediately darkened. Without thinking, he pulled the bow and shot an arrow. With a whoosh, the arrow pierced through the air and went straight through the grass target. It was almost the same as yesterday. The grass target was brought forward and fell down. The surrounding recruits immediately applauded and cheered. Here, people always worship the strong. Wang Ba put down his bow and walked in front of Yin. He said in an overbearing manner, "It's your turn." He deliberately raised his voice so that everyone around could hear him. Yesterday, you couldn't pull the bow. In front of everyone, you said that you can pull the bow today. Brother He Yin, today let us see how you pull the bow. What do you think? For a moment, everyone's eyes were on He Yin. He Yin's name had spread throughout the entire military camp because of yesterday's incident. Everyone knew that Liang Jiaodo had a recruit who could not even pull the bow, but still dared to boast shamelessly. Now that they saw the real person, they all looked at He Yin and waited for a good show. Ehigu, Xiao Mai timidly tugged at the corner of her clothes. He Yin smiled at her and slowly walked forward. She faced Wang Ba's malicious smile. Her expression was magnanimous, and her tone was modest. Brother, it must be hard for you to remember my words so clearly. Since you want to see so much, I'll let you see, she said lightly. Chapter 46. Everyone stared at He Yan's movements. The young man walked to the crossbow. Compared to his thin and small body, the crossbow did not match him at all. She picked up the crossbow, took out an arrow from the quiver, and put her finger on it. Wang Ba looked at her with disdain and said, "Put in more effort. Don't be like yesterday, putting on airs for a long time only to say that you can't pull it open." Ian did not seem to hear his words. On the other hand, Hongshan was a little nervous and secretly worried for He Yin. The recruits in the army admired the strong. He Yin was not a girl, so they would not have any pity for him. They would only think that he was weak. Weak people were not worthy of sympathy. If he was a braggart, people would look down on him even more. He Yin had said yesterday that if he could not do it today, not only would the instructor secretly despise him, but other people in the barracks would also be ashamed to be associated with him and would not be friendly to him in the future. He gave up yesterday without even pulling it open. Could it be that he could pull it open today? The young man's gaze was fixed on the target. From this direction, his hands were very steady. His sunken eyes were like a hunting beast, quietly waiting for the moment to jump. The bow was pulled open. Bit by bit, it was not easy, but slowly, without any tremors, it was pulled open slowly. It was different from yesterday. It could be seen that the bow was slowly being pulled open. "It's moving." Xiao Mai excitedly tugged at Shirtu's clothes. "Big brother, Ehigo pulled the bow open." He knew that He Yin could do what he said. He did not know how many times he had said it. The crowd whispered. Wang Ba did not expect this to happen. He was stunned at first, but then he immediately felt angry, as if he had been slapped in the face. He gritted his teeth and stood still, wanting to see what kind of exquisite archery He Yin could show. Liang Jiaodo, who originally did not have much hope, was also attracted by He Yan's movements. This kid was good. Yesterday, he had said that he could draw the bow today, And today he really did. How'd he do it in a day? Could it be that he had been pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger yesterday, saying that he didn't even know how to do it, just so that he could be in the limelight now? While everyone was talking, the bow was already half drawn. Hien stopped and did not continue to pull the string. This was already her limit. She loosened her grip, and the arrow flew steadily towards the target. Everyone stared at the tail feather of the arrow. The arrow flew in the direction of the target, but before it reached the target, it fell powerlessly to the ground. There was a sigh of regret from the crowd, as if the arrow should have undoubtedly hit the center of the target. Hien withdrew his hand. Xiaomai was the first to jump out. He ran to Hien's side and said with bright eyes, "Ehigu, you really pulled the bow. Amazing." Hongshan also came over and patted Hien on the shoulder. "You're really something." Although Shirtu didn't say anything, he also smiled, showing that he was very happy. Liang Jiaodo also gave Hien a look of affirmation. When the surrounding recruits saw this, they gradually started to talk about it. He really pulled the string. Looks like he wasn't bragging. It's just luck. He just happened to pull the string. Luck is also a kind of strength. Plus, he did what he said. That's not bad. Wang Ba was a little confused. He came to see Hien make a fool of himself. But in the end, it seemed like Hien was the one who was in the limelight. He looked at the target that fell in the middle. Hien didn't hit the target at all. He didn't even touch the edge of the target. If it was someone else, it would be a very bad result. Why was it that when it came to him, it was just short of applauding and celebrating? Did he make a mistake? Wang Ba was unconvinced. Isn't it just pulling the bow? Ask around in the barracks. How many people pulled the bow? I'm afraid everyone except you. What's so great about that? Me? Hien pointed at himself and laughed. But I'm the exception. I couldn't pull the bow a day ago, but I pulled it a day later. That's called great. Her eyebrows were curved, and she laughed happily. When Wang Ba saw this smile, he was so angry that his heart turned upside down. He said, "I'm not convinced." "What are you not convinced about?" Hien asked. Wang Ba was a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. He admired the strong and despised the weak. People like Hien, who was weak, were born to dislike him. In addition, he had a grudge with Hien in the past. If he didn't find trouble for Hien, he wouldn't be happy. How could someone like you be a recruit and train with us? Wang Ba turned to Liang Jiaodo. "Liang Jiaodo, I'm not convinced." Liang Jiaodo looked at them calmly and didn't have any intention of interrupting. He was an instructor, not their superior. After this batch of recruits finished training here, they might be stationed in the Liangzhou Guards, or they might follow Xiaoju to other places. In the end, they wouldn't be his people. His responsibility was to teach them basic skills and pick out some good seedlings. In the end, it was the general's job to organize the troops. Was he going to lose Wang Ba, who was very talented in the bow and arrow, for Hien, who didn't look particularly outstanding? You don't have to make things difficult for Liang Jiaodo. Hien glanced at Liang Ping and knew what he was thinking. The instructor here was very cunning. He would definitely weigh the pros and cons at this time. She looked at Wang Ba. "Tell me what you want." Wang Ba laughed sinisterly. "You'll be the head soldier." "No." Hien rejected without thinking. "Why should I? Why should I?" Wang Ba said, "Because you couldn't draw the bow yesterday and shot so badly today. Your friend actually cheered for you. Don't tell me that when you go to the battlefield in the future, Dewey's soldiers will be like you, using the bow and arrow so badly that they can't even kill a single enemy. Do they still need people to cheer for them? What kind of army is this?" Wow. Hien couldn't help but applaud Wang Ba in her heart. She even said that the mountain bandits were not literate. Now, it seemed that she was smart. Her words were so dignified. When she first entered the military camp, she was not so good at talking. She was indeed the head of the mountain. If she did not know how to bluff, how could she be the boss? Fortunately, she had been in the army camp for so many years and had seen such a scene before. "Not bad, you're right." The youth brushed away a lock of hair that had fallen on her forehead. She paused for a moment before saying, "However, you also saw that I couldn't draw the bow yesterday, but I can draw it today. You hit the target yesterday, and you still hit it today." Everyone looked at her. They didn't understand what she meant. I'm getting stronger day by day, but you're just getting stronger day by day. In that case, I'll be able to hit that grass target 10 days later. What about you? You'll still only be able to hit this grass target. 10 days later, I will definitely beat you, she said word by word. Chapter 47. 10 days from now, I will definitely defeat you. The young man's voice was powerful and resonant. The sunlight shone on his eyes, making them look like sparkling gems. For a moment, Wang Ba actually doubted himself. The next moment, he was shocked by his momentary doubt. He secretly cursed himself for being scared by a brat who was still wet behind the ears. He had lived for more than half his life. How could he lose to a weak brat? Ignorant brat. His mouth was too big. He thought too highly of himself. He coldly snorted and said, Hien, do you know what you're saying right now? Do you want me to repeat it? The young man smiled and said, Since your ears are bad, I will repeat it again. 10 days from now, I will definitely defeat you. You. Wang Ba clenched his fists. He must be crazy. Hong Shan muttered. Wang Ba's archery skills were obvious to everyone. Hien might have improved a little compared to yesterday, but to be able to hit the target in one shot was not something that could be achieved in 10 days. It was understandable for a young man to say harsh words in a fit of anger. However, if he went too far, what would he do if he was embarrassed in the future? If you can't defeat me 10 days from now, what will you do? Wang Ba gritted his teeth and said. He decided not to argue with this young man. Hien was too thick-skinned. If you mocked him, he would ignore it. If I can't defeat you, I will be the team leader, Hien answered readily. But if you can't defeat me, I will be the team leader, Wang Ba said loudly. I didn't say that. Hien shook his head. Even if I want you to be the team leader, Liang Jiaodo will not agree. She looked at Liang Ping meaningfully. Liang Ping, who was calculating in his heart, was speechless. How strange. How did this brat know what he was thinking? With Wang Ba's talent, the head instructor will kill him if he becomes the team leader. Then tell me, Wang Ba said impatiently. Hien's mind suddenly flashed back to the time when he was young in the Xianchang dojo, where the youngsters loved to play games together. Xiao Ju, as the number one in the Xianchang dojo, had been pestered and challenged by many people when he was young. What did he say at that time? She remembered that the youth was sitting behind a rockery in the academy, taking a nap. When he was woken up by someone, he sat up in annoyance and lazily said to his classmate who came to challenge him, All right, if I lose, you can do whatever you want with me. If you lose, he smirked, you'll have to call me father. As Ian thought about it, he felt that the current situation was somewhat similar to what had happened back then. However, she could not let Wang Ba call her father. How about this? I heard that you're the head of the mountain and their boss. If I beat you, it means that my ability is above yours. You'll have to call me boss in the future. What do you think? This request was really unheard of. Everyone looked at Hien, who was not even as tall as Wang Ba's chest, and whose arms were as thin as firewood. Then, they looked at Wang Ba, who was tall and strong, and whose fists were bigger than Hien's face. They fell silent. Your ambition is really not small. Wang Ba stared at Hien and said with a fake smile. To be honest, before I joined the army, I also thought about becoming a bandit. Hien's face was filled with emotion. That year, when she left the He family, she carried her luggage at night and hesitated several times at the city gate. She was hesitant between two paths. One path was to directly go down south and become a bandit, and the other path was to go west and join the Fuyue army. The good thing about being a bandit was that she was free and there was no one to control her. The bad thing was that if the harvest was not good and no one passed by, she would not know her next meal and would starve. Also, the government would come out to suppress the bandits. She would often hide here and there, which was not very dignified. Although joining the army was a bit more difficult, it was still food provided by the government, so it would be dignified. However, neither of these two paths accepted women, so she had to disguise herself. Fortunately, she was good at pretending to be a young master since she was young, so she was able to rise step by step. Now that she thought about it, She really sighed, seeing that Hien still looked like he was reminiscing about the past. Wang Ba was even more angry. This kid now looked like he was only 15 or 16 years old. Why was he acting like he was an old man? Reminiscing about the past? Did he have a past to reminisce about? Okay. He tried hard to control his anger and not let himself chop off the kid's head. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. If you want to be the boss, then let's see if you have the ability. Okay. He cupped his hands toward the surrounding recruits. I'll have to trouble everyone to be the witnesses of the bet. Since it's like this, we'll see the results here in 10 days. I wish myself good luck. She snapped her fingers and looked at ease. It was unknown whether she was confident or had a unique skill in her hands. She looked as if she was sure that she would win. Wang Ba left angrily. Xiao Mai and Hong Shan rushed up and surrounded Hien. The people who were watching the show gradually dispersed. Occasionally, there were a few people who looked at Hien with complicated expressions of admiration and sympathy. They probably all thought that Hien would definitely be the head soldier. Liang Ping glanced at Hien, shook his head, and left with his hands behind his back. As he walked, he sighed. Young people were so impulsive and didn't consider the consequences of their actions. However, why did he feel a little excited as he thought about it? Chapter 48. Since the first day, Hien made the bet with Wang Ba. The people in the barracks also started to bet in private. Some people who were not present to see Hien draw the bow even came to see how Hien looked like before going to bed at night. Hien remembered that the last time he attracted so much attention was when he won a battle as General Fei Hong and was rewarded by the imperial court. Although the situation was different now, he was still famous. Those people are too much. Xiao Mai came back from outside and said unhappily, I heard that the number of people who bet that Ahigo will win can be counted on one hand. They are so sure that Ahigo will not win. This is the normal choice of a normal person. Hong Shan facepalmed. Thanks to Hien's good fortune, these days, the recruits could do nothing but train and endure hardships. Once this matter came out, there was a lot of fun. Everywhere was brimming with cheers and laughter, as if they had come to the city square of the capital. Big Brother and I also want to join the fun to boost Ahiji's morale. We bet that Ahigo will win. Xiao Mai looked at Hien and said fawningly, Ahigo, aren't we very loyal? Before Hien could say anything, Hong Shan asked first, how many biscuits did you bet? Big Brother and I each bet 1 biscuit. 1 biscuit. Hong Shan deliberately dragged his voice. Then how many biscuits did you bet on Wang Ba? 10. Xiao Mai answered without thinking. When he came back to his senses and met Hien's gaze, he blushed and stammered, No, we wanted to win more biscuits and share them with everyone. If Ahigo loses, we can't lose both the biscuits and the money. It's good to fill our stomachs. His voice became softer and softer. In the end, he did not dare to speak and looked at Hien pitifully. Hien was very surprised. Where did you get 10 biscuits? Even if they save 1 biscuit every day, they could not save so much. On credit. Hien was very surprised that he could even buy on credit. He thought that this was actually a big gamble and not just a small one. She said earnestly to Xiao Mai, you'd better quickly withdraw from Wang Ba's bet. 10 biscuits. Are you planning to starve for 10 days? Can you survive that? Hong Shan had a headache. Be reasonable. Now is not the time to be angry. Hien, what can I say to make you believe that I'm not acting out of spite? He refused to believe it. The other 3 almost had this sentence written on their faces. Hien had no choice but to stand up and say, Then I'll go out and practice first. He left the room. Sigh. Mai sighed with melancholy. Sigh. Hong Shan sighed gloomily. Stone silently looked at the two of them. He didn't say anything and sighed as well. The atmosphere in the room was gloomy. The bet with Wang Ba was only the beginning of Hien's fame. These days, Hien's name could be heard everywhere. Did you hear? However, looking at the young man's clothes, he didn't look like a new recruit in the military camp, nor did he look like an instructor. He looked no different from the son of a noble family in the capital. I've heard about you a long time ago. I admire you. I want to become sworn brothers with you. From now on, we'll be brothers. How about that? He said. Ian was confused. This person wanted to become sworn brothers with her. She didn't even know his name or surname. At this time, Liang Jiao walked up and smiled at the young man in yellow. Young Master Chung, the commander-in-chief, wants you to stay away from the crossbow. Xiao Ju. Ian suddenly remembered where she had seen this young man before. She and He Yunsheng were in the military camp and secretly taught young Master Zhao a lesson. This caused young Master Zhao to vent his anger on his beloved horse and wanted to kill it on the street. However, he was stopped by Xiao Ju. At that time, the person who was with Xiao Ju was this delicate young master. Yeah, he actually followed Xiao Ju to the Liangzhou garrison. Uncle is too suspicious. It doesn't matter. The crossbow won't hit me. The young man muttered a few words and obediently retreated a little. Uncle? Ian was even more surprised. This young man was Xiao Ju's nephew. However, Xiao Ju's family only had 2 young masters and no other daughters. What kind of complicated relationship was this? Before Ian could think clearly, he heard a familiar voice. You're here. It was Wang Ba. He was also fully prepared today. He had already taken off his red robe and was only wearing a red robe. He was bare-chested and there was a long red belt tied around his forehead. He looked as if he was going to fight in the arena. His voice was also very loud. He heard that the brothers in the tent had given him all the food last night so that he could use all his energy today. He walked to the crossbow and stood next to He-Yin. He looked at He-Yin provocatively. 10 days have passed. Now is the time for you to fulfill your promise. I remember. You didn't have to say it so loudly. He-Yin picked at his ear. You first. Wang Ba snorted and moved closer to He-Yin. He said in a low voice, Is it too late for you to beg for mercy now? That's exactly what I wanted to say to you. He-Yin replied neither quickly nor slowly. I think you're looking for death. Wang Ba sneered. He strode forward and said, He-Yin doesn't dare to go first. Then I'll go first. Sounds of discussion rose around them. He-Yin shrugged and stood to the side. Hong Shan asked him in a low voice, He, are you nervous? I'm not nervous. He-Yin was somewhat helpless. He patted Hong Shan's nervous face. So you don't have to be nervous even more. I'm afraid that he'll perform too well. In fact, Wang Ba performed very well every day. There was no such thing as too well. He stepped forward, put the crossbow, and held the arrow with his fingers. Chapter 50. The bow and arrow were still the same bow and arrow from 10 days ago, and the person shooting the arrow was still the same person from 10 days ago. However, the atmosphere was different. The smile on the young man's face disappeared. He placed his finger on the arrow and looked straight at the center of the grass target. The clouds just now dispersed, and the scorching sun shone on his face. It was unusually hot in summer, and a drop of sweat slowly rolled down his forehead. The drop of sweat was crystal clear and was about to roll into his eyes. It made people's hearts tighten for no reason, and they wanted to reach out and wipe the drop of sweat away. However, the young man did not move at all, as if he was a piece of shirt too. He did not feel anything and did not notice the drop of sweat. His gaze did not waver at all. The bow was slowly pulled open, a part of it, half of it, until it was fully pulled. Everyone's hearts followed suit. Just as they were about to suspect that the bow was going to break in the next moment, the young man stopped what he was doing. He was caught off guard and let go of the arrow in his hand. The arrow was like a meteor that cut through the night sky. Only a gust of wind could be felt, and it aggressively rushed towards the target. With a bang sound, the target fell down, and this time, the target was brought further away, making it impossible for people to see the arrow on it clearly. She shot the target down just like Wang Ba. Someone exclaimed, 11 days ago, He stood here and could not even pull the bow open. 10 days ago, He could only pull the bow open a small part. Now, she was here and the bow was fully drawn, and the target fell to the ground. Her strength had improved greatly in these 10 days. But Hien was not a child prodigy. How could things like strength grow with the wind? Ehiga is amazing, Xiaomai shouted, laughing and jumping. Ehiga won. What won? A recruit who bet on Wang Ba's victory felt sorry for his biscuit and said unconvinced, "He only hit the target, but it doesn't mean that he hit the center of the target. If he didn't hit the target, he still won." When he said this, everyone remembered that they weren't watching He Yan's performance of drawing the bow as far as he could draw the bow. It was probably because she was too thin and weak in the past that she couldn't even pull him apart. Now that she was surprised by the growth of Yan's arm strength, she even forgot to check her aim. "I'll go take a look." Someone volunteered to run to the target. Wang Ba looked at Yan. The young man was standing under the scorching sun, his lips full of smiles. It was his same smile again. He had been like this ever since he met him. He didn't seem to be worried at all. He was always so confident and disgusting. But Wang Ba looked at his own hand. Why was he also wavering? He was an orphan without parents. When he was young, he was taken away by a wolf.